Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome you to the July 22nd Board of Education meeting, special meeting dealing with the budget.
Thank you for reminding me.
Ms. Westphal, please call the roll.
Harold Brown.
Present.
Maxine Drew.
Present.
Janie Humphreys.
Present.
Brenda Jones. Wanda Brownlee Page. Valdina Wynn.
Present.
Stacy Yeager.
Present.
Need a motion, please, for the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the special agenda. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passed. Good afternoon, Dr. Faust. Human Resources Report.
I'd ask that the Kansas Board of Education approve the Human Resource Report and recommendations as submitted by Kelly Tushman, Chief of Human Resources, and as recommended by myself, Charles Faust, Superintendent of Schools.
And just a generic question. Will we have any legal representation today?
Yes. Yes.
Greg's on his way.
Okay.
I move to approve.
It's been moved. Want to second it? Moved. Want to second it?
Seconded. Then I didn't hear you, Maxine.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passed. Now, this is what we're here for. The approved publication of notice of hearing for the 1920 budget also includes the budget workshop. So we have, welcome you, Mr. Covington, or did you want to make some?
No.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The purpose of today is for you all to approve the notice of hearing that we need to post in our paper by Monday in order for it to run on Thursday to give us the 10 days to where we can approve the budget at our regularly scheduled board meeting in August on the 13th.
Correct. State statute requires 10 days
Yes.
notice.
So in front of you, I say, let's just start with what we propose for next year. So to make sure there's no questions on what's actually in the budget for next year for approval.
Okay.
And if you all recall, these are the same numbers that we went through before at our previous budget meeting. Our sustaining operations budget includes the social workers, our move over for the skilled trade workers, stormwater rate increase, and the contract for Fairfax for $1.6 million. Then we had our case for investment for investing in our employees, for our certified staff. Yes, ma'am?
Would you like to go back to a slide that talked about, on one of our sheets is called redirects?
Yes.
And I think you may not, is it, you may have,
This slide.
is it, did we move past it? Or did we not get to it?
I did not review that one.
Okay,
But we can.
thank you.
Our reductions. We had a reduction in our substitute teachers. We had brought in that cost back in-house, and based on our expenditures, we were able to reduce that line. And also, we reduced the cost of 5 school resource officers that we redirected to refocus on how we deliver that same program with school resource officers and school security associates. We cut $317,000 out of purchase services. We had some contracts in HR that actually the line was too high, the same for tuition and some consultants, so we cut those out of the budget. We cut our instructional supplies, AV supplies, and library books and software through the 3-year trend. Those lines also was over budgeted, so we redirected those funds, and also our equipment. So we redirected $3.3 million out of our current budget to help fund the new initiatives for next year.
And if you needed further reference, it just was titled 2018-19 Budget Redirects. My one question is, you will continue to have training for substitutes?
Yes, we did not cut the training line. This was just the cost of paying for the subs. The training line, we did not cut at all.
How about, perhaps maybe you cut the 15,000 training for those that you cut, maybe? On this says
Yes.
15,000.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
With the
maybe
number reduction,
more
yes.
clarity.
Yes.
All right. There was one. We had a question in our sub meeting about Debate KC. The 64,500 for Debate KC.
We discontinued that program.
And what is Debate KC again?
Discontinued it because Debate KC is a program in which they work as a go-between between us and the bigger part of the city. They help train the kids to debate. They hold tournaments. It goes across state line.
Actually, we didn't cut it. It was over budgeted. We didn't delete it.
Right.
The line had too much money on it.
Okay, so you
according to
cut
the 3 years training.
64,500 out of the
Yes.
Right.
and what is the remaining, and where is it then identified?
Debate KC costs about $32,000 a year.
Okay, and then where would we find it again?
In the curriculum budget?
Okay,
Yes.
so we'll look for it in the
In the
curriculum
curriculum
budget.
budget.
All right. And what governs, and we've already had this discussion, but what governs my questions is that state statute says the board is responsible for the details of the budget.
That's right.
So, Dr. Yeager, did you hear me? Maybe she's there, maybe she's not. Maybe she's on her way. But that there were some questions we had when we had our individual. Okay. So, so that still stays 3.3. Now, question, in some conversation, get out of your space. In some conversation, these were, were there additional funds that were not utilized? I think you mentioned that there were $8 million that were not allocated. Is this $3 million part of that?
So what she's talking about, they were allocated, the budget was just over budgeted. So what he's done is gone back and did a 3-year trend to see, based on the 3 years that we've had that money in specific items, we've only used X amount of dollars, so he was able to pull that money from there and then redirect it to another line item.
Right, so that my question then is, of that $8 million, this is 3.3 million of it?
Yes.
Okay, so the other $5 million we'll find where?
I'm not following the 8 million number, though.
That was $8 million, the figure given to us.
I'm not recalling that number.
Okay, well, you know, I can't make it up.
8 million.
So in this one, it was $3 million is what we redirected.
So if there was other dollars, I did not touch any line that other than these to cut the 3.3 million.
Okay, so because I can't not make that figure up, and that it was communicated to us, therefore, I'll ask you the question from time to time as far as if additional funds were not used, maybe we redirected them or used them someplace else. Is that a fair comment?
So for instance, I think if you go back and look at how much was budgeted for substitutes, what was the original, like for last year?
Oh, we can find it.
I know this is off the top of your head.
This, maybe.
I think
this
it
is
was
what
close to
cut.
5 million.
So 5 million, and so from that 5 million, they took 2 from that, I'm assuming 2.5?
Well, probably there's 2, and then all those other additional costs that would go along with additional subs.
And so you're going to find, as we spoke of earlier in the budget prep, through other budgets, there were other monies in other departments that was repurposed.
Okay,
in there.
okay. So, and again, the generic question is, then there will be other savings throughout that perhaps we can identify as, let me ask it this way. Are you suggesting there's only 3.3 savings in the entire $300 million budget?
In the operations budget. I'm not sure we not confused the capital budget, because there was some capital money that was not used that we went through and we allocated what we was going to use with those dollars.
Right, we got that. So I've got all your paper, the paper. That would be 200. That may have been 4.7 million.
Yes.
Okay, so we're getting close.
Right.
So 4.7 and 3.3 could be the 8.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
All right. Just want to follow
Yes.
the bouncing ball. Okay. And again, as a member of the education budget, I deal with $3 billion with a B. So 300 million is not too much of a challenge, but that we are responsible for every dime. Now, we're not going to go through $300 million by dimes.
Right.
But just that, because they're separate sheets, I do want to be clear.
Yes.
And please, board members, with your tolerance and staff, it's the process. Okay, thank you. All right, so that's, so the substitute teachers, because we didn't use them before.
Right.
You established the 3-year trend that we probably wouldn't need additional funds for them.
No.
These funds.
We left the original budget for the subs, I think, was 6.1 million. So we reduced them by 2 million.
Got it.
So there's 4 million left to pay for the subs, which covers what we paid this year, but with a small increase just in case.
Got it. And the rationale with these are the school libraries.
Yes. Public school, yes, our school library, not the public library.
Right. Now, help me understand the reductions in the subs professional leave for IEPs, paying for subs for 4 days for sped teachers. That's reduced.
Yes.
That would be where? Purchase
It would be part of the
services?
substitute teachers in total.
Oh.
It'd be
Okay,
part of
okay.
that 2.5 million.
Now, did we cut the para-to-teaching program, or this was
No.
just 167,000 cut from?
Yes.
And what's remaining?
So again, this is after the 3-year trend. After the 3 years, the money that was already in those budget items, it was just taken out. It was, so if, let's say, if there were $20 in there and we were only using $2 for 3 years, we took $17 out.
Okay,
And so that's what you're seeing.
right. So what you left or what you cut, the 20 staff? Is that what's left? Budget redirection.
Yes.
Says for 20 staff per year. So we
Yes.
only have money allocation for 20 paras to,
No, I cut the total for the 20.
you cut 20.
Yeah.
So what's left?
Whatever was in
I
there.
don't
So-
remember what's left.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about in the pre-budget session.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, he only took away what special ed said they didn't need based on it. And so that's what you're getting is after each department has gone over their budget, as we had stated back in June. That's actually, I'll be honest with you, why we wanted the questions
That's
before.
correct. And
So
because
we could answer these. Well, we answered these in the budget meetings.
some we did, some we didn't.
We went over the whole budget.
No, I'm
so-
not questioning we
no, no.
didn't.
But what I'll say is that he doesn't have the number of how many are still there. He has the number of how many each department said they didn't need after the 3. So after the 3-year trend, each head of their department came and sat down with the entire finance department and spent hours with them, days, actually some of them were days, with them to say, this is what we need. Will this be sufficient? And they would say yes. If it wasn't, then he was asking, they had a list of questions, or they would generate questions for them. And so what you're getting is, under the redirection or the reductions, those are the numbers that the individual said, we have too many, so we can make it with what we have. Remember, and so this is the reason why you're getting the reductions, because you approved last year's budget with them in there.
Correct.
And so this is new, so anything that's new we are reapproving, or getting the approval. So that's where this is coming, all this is coming from. So your question of the 20, so they told us to take 20 away.
Got it.
So that's where that's coming from.
And the reason I'm asking, because further along, there are, and it may not be in this specific category, but there's further along requests for special ed professionals. And I'll just put it like that. They may not be the exact same. So I'm just want to be clear that if there's a need over here, it may not have been. They just may have made across each other. So that's all.
So what you're saying, or what you're seeing, is paras. So if let's say a special ed teacher has to go to a meeting, we hire a substitute or a para, someone to go into that classroom, provide services. What the additions in there for special ed are, if all those positions were filled, we would still need X amount of teachers. That's where so those are two different line items.
Correct, and I understand that. And what I'm suggesting is that as we move further with use of new money or redirecting old money, perhaps reducing a number of para. Now, but now this is a para. This is not reducing a para. This is reducing the para being able to acquire additional hours. Correct? The para to teaching.
I was actually taking notes.
Okay. So what does para to teaching mean?
That's the program where we sponsor paras to go and get their teacher's license.
Okay. That's what I thought it was. I think that's what I just said.
Yes.
So I'm clear about what it is, and I'm clear also that this is based on the assessment by each of your department people to build the budget.
Yes.
So I got the process down. Just asking for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we already clarified the debate KC, which came up in our part. Okay. Thank you.
Next is the section on the new money. And as I previously stated, the first section was on sustaining operations, things that we must do. The social workers in you all's 18-19 budget, you said you would move half that cost into the 19-20 budget from contingency, and so that's the $900,000. We also have skilled trade workers that's paid out of our capital money, and we're trying to move those back to the general fund. So we're moving $500,000 of the $2.4 million that's in the capital budget over to the general fund. Our stormwater rate increase is what we got from the GU for the $185,000, and the Fairfax Learning Center contract is the increase for our current program at Fairfax, not the new program for the suspension center.
Now help me again understand when then the 34 social workers is a social worker in every school building? The number, is that the number?
Yes, you all approved 34 social workers to be paid from the contingency fund in the 18-19 budget.
Now you're saying take it from the contingency and put into the operation general
We're
fund?
going to fund 17 of them in the general fund in the 19-20 budget, which leaves 17 that we have to pay for out of contingency in the 19-20 budget.
Okay. Now, again, with the different rearranging the decks, the chairs on the Titanic, with the pilot program, what is the numbers? What happens to the numbers?
So that's a different program. This is what the board approved last year to hire 34 social workers. And what you stated is that you would move half of them over this school year. So that's all we've done. That pilot program is totally funded differently from this. So that doesn't touch the ones from the pilot. This is all the ones that we have paid for because the pilot has money that comes from the state.
Correct.
And so that's only the 34 that the board requested that we hire out of our contingency fund last year. And then you also voted to bring only half of them out of contingency this year in that same meeting. And so that's all this is. It's honoring what the board asked for last year.
So where then are the pilot ones? I know they're funded out of a different silo. So where are they? Where are they? What are they in? Where are they?
They would be in
New dollars, someplace at 8.
Budget.
Someplace, sorry, what?
They would be in the student services budget.
Okay. And that's that. I mean,
They're still there.
they're still there. That's
Yes,
all.
ma'am.
That's
They're
all the
still
question is.
Yes.
And you don't know past. Why were maintenance salaries allowed to be paid out of the capital budget?
It is, but it's not an efficient use of capital money, especially with the age of our facilities. We need to really use those dollars for capital improvement of our buildings.
Okay. This Fairfax Learning Center contract, is this part of the $1 million we already approved, or is this separate?
Yes. This is what you all approved, I think in the April board meeting.
For Greenbush?
Yes.
So the balance comes, is someplace else?
Yes, this is just the increase to that contract.
Thank you. Guess I'm the only one with questions. That's okay. It's our
The
job.
next section is investing in our employees. We went through what the salary increase lines were for our certified, classified staff. The certified came to a $3.5 million increase, and the 2% for all other staff being classified was right at $1.1 million. And then we also implemented the longevity supplement, and as you see, the certified staff and classified staff with a 1% for 10 to 14 years, or 1.5% for 15 to 19 years, and 2% for 20 years plus. And those are the totals that will increase the budget to cover those costs.
Now, the longevity is what we've had. That's no change.
No, this is new.
This is new.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I'm concerned that, and I will not support 2% for classified because it's higher than, I just won't support 2%. So that's a discussion, I think, and I can make it an emotion for further discussion, but I don't support 2%.
So if I may, I do want to remind you that last year we gave certified a raise. There were a couple years where only certified got a raise and no one else got a raise.
Correct. I remember.
And so we have to understand that we can't run this district with just teachers. We have to have our skilled workers, everyone. It's a team approach. And so when we start to divide it that way, we start to create silos. And so if we're wanting to work as a team, we need to start to think about it. I mean, we can even go back to there were years where classified had to give up a day.
Yeah.
They also, principals had to give up a day, and it's not even in their contract. They had to agree based on their contract. And so, you know, I'm just going to put that out there for everyone, and I'll say that for the record so they can understand where we're going. If that's what you are saying, that I don't agree, because we have a lot of people that make this system go around and around, and those individuals who get up and check the snow, those people who clean up after individuals, just as those teachers who, I mean, I'm for everyone. I've found my bus driver's license as we were cleaning up stuff so we can move. It's like, hey, I could tweet this. So I know what it takes when you're getting on a bus and it's cold out there and you have to stay on that bus because you can't leave it running. And I know what it's like to be a teacher assistant, and you do more and more and more, and you're giving up days. I'm just saying we have to be considerate of everyone when we're doing it. And so we look at that budget item line, and so if we think last year we didn't do anything, so technically we could say that would be $500,000 for classified. So if you're giving $500 last year, or you can say the year before, because I don't think there was anything the year before. So if we divide that by 3, then it's an even smaller amount. So just make sure that we understand what we're saying when we are looking at our classified staff.
Let me counter that. I do believe last year classified received 1%, and I would ask Greg for you to go back to the record.
I think that's right.
Classified did receive 1%. Now, there was, yes, a motion to, in essence, freeze administrators. And what we did not make clear and what we do not know, which we had to make clear today, is this $1.6 million including a step? There is a salary schedule of which we have not been paying attention to. So does this $1.06 million include a step?
No.
Okay, so that's not clear. But there was so I am, for the record, I am very understanding, if nothing else, when we went to, I think, T.A. Edison, that school is on a mountain, the side of a mountain. And if the snow people hadn't gotten out there before, we wouldn't have been there. So to say a 1%, which appears to be the 1% for the certified staff, yeah, you have, I think we have employees 5,000, only 2,000 are teachers. But to classify, 1% would include the administrators. And another point that we have to make clear is, and Greg, I'll throw the ball to you, new teachers coming in, the salaries, the contract's already approved, so they come in where they are. Administrators or any other classified, because we've had conversation that some of the custodians, whether it's correct or incorrect, are not being paid, and that addresses another position.
So in that, when we were talking about it in our board prep, remember there were years where the board did not give a step. And so that's what happens if the step was frozen. And now if I'm coming out and we both have 17 years,
correct. Your
your step was frozen, and let's say I have 18, I'm going to come in higher because the board decided to do that. That wasn't what HR decided. The board decided to freeze the step. So that's where we're getting off in saying that we're doing that. That was years ago when the board voted to freeze a step for classified or whomever else. And so when other people come in, you may have 17 years equal. However, that person can come in higher because that step, they are getting a different step, and you didn't get steps with your 17 years. So if you were frozen for 3 years, technically you're only getting, what, 14? And then everyone else will come in at an 18, so that'll make them a different step. So
yeah, there are explanations for it, and past boards have done X or past boards have done Y. So what I'm saying, 2019-20, I do not support a 2% because it is and I passed this out to us before, our neighbor to Shawnee Mission, although I'm the first one to say they're not our peer, there is not always the same amount given to all. I'm just saying I don't support a 2%, and I'll make a motion not to do it, and I may or may not proceed, but on record, why am I saying that? Because the 1% And are you, please be clear. The 1% would be either a 1% and a step, or the 1%, what's the cost of 2%, what's the cost of 1% and a step for classified?
They're both about $1 million. A step and a 1%
Okay.
is about $1 million each, right under $1 million for each one.
And then my other caveat is we have, she must be on her way. She just hung up. Well, we have a new salary schedule for nutritional workers?
Yes.
Okay, how does this fit? Are they classified?
Yes.
Okay, so does this add additional to
these costs does not cover nutritional service. Their budget is separate. So within his budget, he has taken the beginning pay for nutritional workers to $13 an hour, and that's included in the section on nutritional services.
Right. I guess my question is, how do we pull out nutritional workers from our classified workers? We just do it?
Well, by law, we can't pay for them out of these dollars.
Yeah.
We have to pay for them out of the nutritional services dollars.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So does their new salary schedule and new whatever increase you propose equate to this?
No, the 13%, the $13 an hour is greater than 2%.
Okay. Well,
But we only took the beginning pay to 2%, to the $13. Everybody else got a 2% salary increase for nutritional service.
well, if nutritional services is another category,
Yes.
then I'll keep this out of discussion.
Yes.
I still will oppose a 2%, and I will accept, and I will only support a 1%. It's open for discussion. I can either make a motion for discussion, or we can discuss it before a motion.
I think we should leave it as is, because it represents a time of support and change for our classified staff, and it puts us in a very positive light for them to be able to see that we're supporting them. And it may be that after next year, we may not have to increase it at 2%. But I'm satisfied with where it is right now.
I'm satisfied too, because if I remember correctly, when we were discussing the contract for the teachers, that it was either like a 2% raise or a 1% with a step, and
Right.
it was about the same amount of
Yes.
money. So essentially, they're each getting
2%.
a 2% raise, which is on par with the classified staff getting a 2% raise. So we're treating everyone with the same cost of living increase is what I would call it. Everyone pays the same for milk and gas, whether they're classified or certified. We're giving them all essentially a 2% raise. If I misunderstood that, you can re-explain it to me, but that's
Yes.
what I took out of it, the discussions we've had.
The certified staff paid on the bachelor schedule get 2% minimum. Others get more.
Right.
But it's not a cost of living. Cost of living is figured on what?
No.
Consumer price index?
We did not
Yeah.
do a cost of living increase.
It's not technically a cost of living, but it's an equal percentage of a raise for all of our staff, except for nutritional services, which is a totally different budget.
I'd like to see us do 1% all and then 1% step. Because it kind of helps out a little bit, especially, I know what it's like to be on the same step for almost 15, 20 years. And it's not a pleasant thing. And I know everything isn't fair in life, but at least if you had the 1% and then the one step, it seems like you're getting something. In essence, to a certain degree, you're not, but it at least gives the presence of that.
The amount the same?
I really don't know, because we haven't costed out a step for every classified person, because those salary schedules are
All over.
Kind of goofy.
sort of jumbled. And so that's why later in the budget, you see where we are proposing doing a compensation study so we can unravel those steps to place people better. So that's why we just went with the 2% across the board.
And I think also it gives, if we do it based upon longevity, it gives people an opportunity to be able to come and be hired and stay here as opposed to switching jobs because of the fact that they feel that they're not getting the pay that they need.
I think there's two different issues. Longevity is one thing. This is base pay. We're not debating longevity.
I understand that, but I'm looking at it from that point of view as well.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I support the 2%, and I'd just like to think things, just from the standpoint of providing, to show them that we are providing, we support what they're all about, and as the superintendent says, they do provide a great service to this district. So based on that, I'd like to stay at 2%.
And for clarity, that's 2% no step.
Correct.
It needs to be pointed in, specified. Any comment? So now, there has been, last year when we made a decision, it wasn't recorded. Do you need a vote to record that? That it says no step? No, I mean, that's important for to say whether you step or not. There's no clarity here with it left off. Now, do you need a vote to record that? Dr. Faust and Mr. Covington?
Because it doesn't, we knew that there was no step in this one. In the other ones, it states it's specific to one step. This one, 2% just across the board.
Right, but in contract language or in employment, if it doesn't say, that's where we get in trouble.
If you want us to add that, they can say no step. I mean, it's literally, they just go back in and you can change it now.
Well, it would cause a person to say, it wasn't clear, was I supposed to get a step or was not supposed to step?
He's doing it now.
Okay,
It won't change on ours, but it's changed on the
Correct.
original one.
Okay.
I mean, he'll upload it again.
Right.
The changes in that one.
Got to put, well, the figures just, shoot the figure over the 1.0. It's just justified, just margins.
This meeting also is recorded, isn't that correct?
Excuse me?
I said this meeting is also being recorded.
Well, our meetings last year was recorded, and it came down to whether or not we were going to have extended care, extended day at Northwest, and this says Emerson. It was documented, we said no funds, and when then we got to that decision, we were told that it was not recorded. So, want to make sure we don't make that mistake again. I'm pretty sure it was recorded last year, because we were all here. Okay, next.
Next section of investing in our employees, we extended our team, our lead ICs and our curriculum development specialists to make them 261 employees for $280,000. The beginning teacher mentor pay, as you recall, the state has mandated that we have the mentors, but they did not fund it. So it's up to the district to fund it. So that will cost us about $50,000. This is the line where I mentioned earlier with the compensation analysis salary adjustment. This is to look at the salary schedules for our classified staff, about $550,000. Once we do the study, we need funding to adjust the salaries. And this won't cover every classified. This is just a start to sort of, as I say, unjumble those schedules for classified. And then our health premium increase is right at 3% for $911,000 with no increase to employees. So with all the salary increases from the beginning page plus these 4 items, our total investment in our employees is $7.4 million.
So are the ICs, are they on teacher salary schedule? Currently. Okay, so up and above their contractual, there is a, how much of an increase is this for ICs?
280,000.
What is that per person?
How many,
I think it says 14.
14
Is
people.
that what it says? That's what it
There's
means?
14 people.
14 people.
But how many ICs do we have?
We have, if you include curriculum and instruction, which is who we're talking about here, plus the building ICs, we've got close to 100. That's only 14 of them.
Just a procedural, how are these 14 chosen?
They're already in place.
They're already
Those
in place?
individuals are already in place.
those are our current
Those aren't
leads.
new
Right.
positions.
They're lead ICs?
Leads,
Right.
yes.
Okay, so we, out of 100 total ICs, we have 14 lead ICs?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with the extra money, is there extra, what are they doing for the extra money? Just working extra days?
Yes. But what this really does is we was bringing them back anyway, calling it extended employment every year. So we might well just go ahead and put it in the budget and increase them to 261. We was paying them anyway.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, under the ICs or the mentoring stipends? Do we already have the mentors?
Mentors are chosen at the building level, so they have the authority to identify them. I don't know if they've identified all of them yet at this point or not.
So this is, help me understand, how many are there?
Depends on how many new teachers we have.
So there could be either savings or an over
Right.
a budget adjustment on this one.
Yes.
And how are budget adjustments handled?
It
they
would have
come back to us?
the board if
Okay.
it's under budget.
If it's under budget?
Yes. If it's over budget, we will wait a 3-year trend to see if the line needs to be reduced or not, because it could fluctuate up or down.
Okay.
The next section is called our new programs and initiatives. You remember our Safe Schools is the board's #1 priority. The 353 is the cost for the 5 school resource officers that we cut in the redirect section. And now we're going to implement a new service where we will have only 1 school resource officer at our 4 high schools, but they will also get 2 security associates to deliver the security at the school. The computer automated dispatch and records management system is just as it says, we need a better tracking system for the incidents and stuff at the school. And so the CAD system is what's used by most police forces. And the student transportation monitoring system, this is the annual cost for the Where's the Bus app.
Generic question, did we apply for any safe school grants this year?
Yes.
We
We
get
got
any?
$254,000.
And those are matching funds?
Yes. And in the capital budget, you'll see where we're putting in the
Matching.
security systems.
Just for a little clarity, under computer automated dispatching and records, there's no line item there. Is that?
No, the whole thing costs $20,000, both
Okay.
pieces.
Okay. I see.
What's the timeline on your security positions?
Be based on the approval of the budget and then the hiring of staff and training of staff.
So the approval of the budget will be by August 12th
Yes.
because it has to be
Correct.
commented
So as soon as
on.
we get the adopted budget, we have the job description and stuff ready to post.
And here, let me throw raw meat to a dog. Is there a residency requirement? Do we have to determine that?
I believe your policy, school district policy, there's no residency requirement.
Really? Where is that?
I think it's your policy, ma'am.
For officers.
For officers, there's no residency requirement?
Oh, no, you're school district employees.
Oh, so they are categorized as school district employees?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I sure would like to encourage us hiring qualified, competent, local people. That's just an
I
encouragement.
encourage that as well.
Okay.
Okay, our next section is our alternative to the suspension center. This is where we will have 25 slots at Fairfax for our alternative system. This is also through Greenbush, that they would monitor and run this program for the $343,000. This is what you also approved in your April meeting.
So the 300,000 is part of the 1 million, or is this on top
This
of 1 million?
On top of.
So what is how much is Greenbush totally servicing us for?
About $1.4 million.
Okay, so this is 300. Where's the other million? What's the other
It's in
100,000?
your continuation budget, and plus the 70,000 from the previous page.
So we're about
For the increase in the
30,000.
contract,
Okay.
yes.
The social worker is with the alternative.
Yes, part of that contract required for us to provide a social worker full-time for just that facility.
We have them hired?
That I do not know.
No.
No, because it has to be approved in the budget before we can hire.
Okay.
And that bottom section is for our instructional software. Our college career readiness software is $143,000. And then we also need a universal screener for our cognitive skills so we can test for gifted students. Those two cost $203,000.
Universal screener. And this still comes out of just general fund?
Yes, ma'am.
For Diploma Plus, do they have something also with the college and career readiness? Are we duplicating?
No, we are exploring a new software due to the
Antiquated
one we were using.
Well, I mean, I didn't know if they had it, because every time you ask them about what's going on, there's not always a clear answer. So I didn't know if they had it, it was an old system, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be a problem with the program, that they lack that.
Yes.
How do you develop a pathway?
This is our solution to that problem.
So we're trying to make it so that it's more impactful, not only for the student, the teacher, and the parent will have access to the college and career readiness applications. And our current program doesn't allow parents, you can't have a discussion over it. Like with this one, the programs that we're looking at, a parent can go and log on with the student's information, and they can see college and career readiness.
So would they have any funds that they set aside for that?
There was
that
never
we
any
can put-
funds for
nothing?
college. No, they were funded through other budgets.
Okay.
They never had a specific line item budget.
I think that would be a part of it, but, okay.
And I appreciate you guys, when we were in the budget meeting, clarifying the universal cognitive skills in that line budget item. In our group, I know we discussed the importance of identifying the gifted children well before when it's time for them to test for summer. So I appreciate you putting that in as a budget and a priority for us to make sure that we're capturing the attention of our gifted students and challenging them to maximum capacity.
So this funding just covers the cost to administer. Where's the cost for training? Any that just happens, comes out of other funds perhaps?
So we will provide you're talking about for the universal screening?
Yeah, I'm right.
cognitive?
I'm reading,
Yes, so we
funds.
will, once they're screened, we already have the individuals here who will teach them. So the PD comes from in-house.
Okay.
We just
Because-
don't have a way of, currently, we don't have a way of screening students other than a parent asking a teacher.
To screen.
But this will level the playing field, so we don't have to, and I will say, there'll also be times where teachers like, I think this person has cognitive ability. We're not negating that either, But we don't want to have to just put all that on a teacher to identify and make sure this, we can say what date we're going to screen, let's say all kindergartners, and then we can screen them. And then you'll get a score back, and then it's like, oh, well, this one needs to move on to further testing.
Okay, so funding covers the cost to administer. What is the cost of the tool?
It's all in that.
It's all in the 60,000?
Yes.
So this is salary?
So it would be just like the testing. We don't have there's not a person that's
It's a software program.
Software.
So when we, almost like when we give the cap,
Right.
the individual, so if it's just done, and then the results are
There's no cost,
collected.
there's no administration cost of that?
It's embedded.
Okay, all right.
The
And
next
when will
section.
we have these? When will they, approval? So August 15th, right? Okay. And we'll look forward to getting a demonstration in maybe a September board meeting or something.
We could do that.
That would be very important. And how do we get the word out to parents that it's available?
Yes, so we will be sending the information out through the school's office. So that will, when it's time to, if this is approved, when it's time to test or screen, we would make sure that parents are aware that on August 30th or September 30th, we are going to be screening kindergarten, 5th grade, whatever.
First, third, and sixth.
We'll be screening those students.
All grades, kindergarten too.
It just says first, third, and sixth.
But they can still make the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to be specific because it won't happen if we're not. So is it, right now it says first, third, and sixth.
Those are the grades that we selected. However, a parent can always, just like if a child is special ed or they want them screened for special ed, the parent can still make that request.
Okay.
We never want to take it away from the parent to say they can't make a request. They can always make that request for us.
So until we get the software, parents can still make a request and go through the old way?
Yes.
And then will retesting be done if they've already been identified as
No,
gifted?
like they've already been identified. They're in the.
They're already in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we put it in writing though? Even though we say it's a given, we live in a society. Can we say parents have the right to request if they want to,
Like
even though.
website.
Yeah.
It would be in I'm assuming there's some type of, let's say that it would be because they all fall under special ed. And if there's like a Roman numeral 5 for request, just like in special ed, they have the opportunity to, parents can request. So we can make sure we can get with.
Or just put it on the website.
We can. We've got to build because we don't want to overcommit and underdeliver.
Yeah.
So we will check, with Michelle Cobin's office and Dr. Charles's office to make sure that there is a handbook, if there's a special ed handbook, because it's all under the umbrella of special ed. It's federal funded.
Right. Then if that's the case, why does this not come out of special ed budget?
Based on the allocations of the special ed dollars, the test itself is not for you don't test a special ed child. You test the child to see if they're special ed.
Okay.
So you can't pay for it with special ed dollars.
Now, instructional staffing, are we there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So you see the list of the instructional staff that we are requesting, the 6 bilingual outreach coordinators, addition of 2 sped classrooms with a teacher and a paraprofessional. With the implementation of Spanish back into our middle schools, we need a world language specialist. We need 2 ESL coaches and 2 fine art coaches for a total of $800,000.
Help me understand what's the federal regs that say we must communicate in the language they speak? What's the federal reg that requires that?
I don't recall.
I'm just
the
reading.
reg.
Maybe under our title, that's our
Yeah.
title.
It's out of
Title 3, Title 2, Title
3. Title
Three?
3.
It's 3.
Title 3. Title 2 is training, Title 3 is ESL.
Yes, no, yeah.
Title 3.
So are you saying we have been out of compliance?
No, for bilingual outreach coordinators?
Correct.
So we're saying we don't have enough.
Right,
have
we need some additional.
Okay.
We need more.
So, and help me see it, I don't see how many additional we're hiring.
6.
Does it say that?
Yeah, not on that, but on here.
Oh, on there. It's another problem we're dealing with. Too many different forms. That's my limitation, and I acknowledged it. And again, why are these special ed teachers not coming out of special ed budget, but out of the general?
Right. In our budget, in our general budget, we have dollars allocated to special ed because their funding does not totally fund our special ed program.
So the fact that special ed dollars are not at the level of our need.
Yes.
And you're coming and
Right. We have a lot of support in our general fund for special ed.
okay. So this is just 2 teachers.
Yes, and 2 paras.
2 teachers, 2 paras. Now here go back to my question 100 years ago. Why, so that these paras are not lacking in continuing education opportunities? Your people said that they didn't need the teaching, continuing ed information, and continuing ed opportunities.
So this position is to hire 2 individuals.
Right, I'm just saying, but we took out 20 from the other. I mean, we didn't use them. So as we hire 2 more, you get what I'm saying? I'm saying, okay, we have redirected funds over in this pot. Now we're hiring 2 additional paraprofessionals. Are your special ed people saying we don't need funding for their continuing educational?
No. In the line item for para to teachers, I think there's if I remember correctly, it's like $140,000 still on that
So
line.
there's still enough money for
Yes,
as many
including
more we
these 2.
hire.
Yes.
Got it. World language curriculum specialist. Tell me.
We currently do not have a world language curriculum specialist, and with us implementing Spanish back into our elementary schools and the increased height, the middle schools and the increased height going into high school, we need a curriculum specialist.
Would this person be able to add Mandarin Chinese to his or her load?
Yes.
The plan is that they would develop a stronger world language program at the high school. If you remember, I brought back to you that we were going to start requiring 2 years of a world language that we took away several years ago. We're bringing that back. This person would help implement that, and a variety of languages would be available through that.
Have you thought down the road, do we have students enrolled in these sections? Go back, original question. What I'm really asking is, how many additional Spanish, what are we asking for, 10, 14?
It's 1 per middle school.
So it's 8.
So do we have students lined up for these classes?
Yes, they'll be part of, at the middle school, they'll be part of their schedule, their elective.
Mm-hmm. They've already enrolled?
Mm-hmm.
Those are, yes.
The middle school has, yes, they have.
So there's just, here we go. We're waiting to approve this to hire the folks.
No, what we're waiting to approve is to hire somebody who will coordinate it. There is a Spanish program out there. It's not very strong because we haven't had somebody leading it. So we're kind of limping through until we can get this position in, so we can get somebody who can strengthen the program and help more or less build it as the plane is in the air.
So this is and with all respect, this is a lofty title, but actually it is Spanish language curriculum specialist, because right now we just, the need is for Spanish.
No, it's going to be all world languages. It's going to be all their responsibility. The first step will be one of the first projects will be building the middle school Spanish one, but it's going to be building our program at the high school into much more depth.
Okay. So is there a job description already for this?
Yes.
Ready to go? Has it been improved? Based on the budget?
I believe it has, yes.
Okay. ESL instructional coaches and fine arts instructional coaches. Two
Two
per
apiece.
cluster.
Yes, two.
What's that total?
136,900.
So just two.
Yes, ma'am. Two of each.
Two. Staff development?
Yes. Our staff development section lists 5 staff development programs that we're trying to implement next year. Our evaluation training module is $153,000. To develop our strategic plan, we have set aside $100,000 for that endeavor. Our PsyOp training is $45,500. And then we're going to start an Aspiring Leadership Academy, and this is just seed money to get that up and running for $10,000. And then our classified supervisor training called Crucial Conversations, where we would take our supervisors through, is $13,000. For a total of $321,500.
Who runs the Aspiring Leadership Academy?
That would be through HR, the workforce development.
Okay. So what's the $10,000 for?
It's
Stipend?
It's stipends to pay current staff to lead instruction.
So 100 administrators?
That's a ballpark.
It's just a ballpark. You have to pay them their hourly rate to lead a section.
So you'll have 100 administrators doing the training, or does this mean 100 administrators will receive the training?
No, not necessarily. These are aspiring.
These aspiring leaders. It's mainly assistant principals or ICs that want to transition into principalship.
Right, I guess I'm asking, what is the meaning of this will impact approximately 100 administrators? What does that mean?
That we could take 100 people through this aspiring
So
leadership
they'll receive the
course.
training?
Yes.
Okay. And this is, because K-State people are doing the training, right?
They're doing some, yes.
They're doing some.
But what we're trying to do is build a bench. We don't have a bench.
Right.
And so
Had that
in order for
conversation.
us to hire from within, we have to have people who are trained from within. And so this is for Aspiring Leadership Academy, those individuals.
But it kind of doesn't open up that track, because you already have to be an assistant principal or new principal?
Well, this is for principals, those who are the up and coming principals. So we do have to have something for them, because, there are people who do want to be, an assistant principal is where they want to stop. But there are some who are wanting to aspire to be a building principal. So what we're trying to do is create what we call is building a bench for those individuals who can.
Yeah, I guess I didn't ask the question clearly. Is there an opening for those who are neither assistant principals nor principals? Is there an opening for anybody?
So they would have to be licensed. If they're licensed, and because this is brand new, we hadn't written a curriculum for it. I'm sure there'll be interviews to get into the academy.
Right.
And so those are things that they have to be able to do. And so, like I said, he said this is seed money this year, so it's trial and error this year.
So as it stands, unless you are an assistant principal or new principal, there is not a door.
That's what I'm saying. But
Don't know
that's
yet.
not my.
Oh, I'm just reading what it says.
Yeah, so that's right. It's for assistant principals and to support new principals.
Right. And the reason being that we're constantly getting friendly phone calls from individuals who said, I've applied for this position for 18 times, I never got an interview, how are you able to break into leadership? And so the answer would be, unless you're an assistant principal or new principal, this is not, at this point, available.
So our goal would be, hopefully,
Yeah.
and I don't ever want us to commit to only the individuals who are in here, because we may get, rock stars from outside of that. But there may be some that are get in the academy, it's like,
yeah,
maybe not yet. And so, but we're wanting to make sure it will help develop them in the role they're in.
Okay, and again, that's what we're here for clarity, because I can only go for what you wrote.
I have a comment on the evaluation training model for teachers and administration. I think this is excellent, but we need to make sure people do the evaluation. And that doesn't make sense, that we're still hearing at the end of the year, people aren't being evaluated the way they're supposed to. And we got to start holding people accountable. If we're going to spend this kind of money to train them, then they need to do their job. And I'm not saying this is you, but I'm just saying in the past, we haven't held people accountable. And it doesn't make sense. They're the administrators. We're training them. Hopefully now that we're training them, we have some leverage. But I just think we need to hold people accountable for that. That it doesn't make sense that I went the whole year and I got evaluated May 10th before I got ready to leave. And that made no sense. And they laughed about it, but it just doesn't make sense.
I got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
What is the need for 6 more bilingual outreach coordinators?
The caseload was extremely high for the ones we currently have.
Okay.
And we were not reaching all the parents that we needed to.
All the parents?
Yes.
And students.
Parents, students.
Anytime our ESL, ELL individuals are enrolled, we don't have enough. So we do contract out.
Right.
We do use some of our faith-based allies to help us, but we're understaffed for that department to help with our community.
Thank you.
And even with the 6, we will still be understaffed. Next section is our administrative staffing. You see those listed above. I won't read them all off to you. I just will say the compensation analyst is the one that will be evaluating our salary schedules. And we have put the $500,000 in the budget to make adjustments to salaries. Highlight the student records manager. We currently do not have one. So we definitely need someone to monitor and maintain our records. Our school treasurer facilitator, we have many issues out in our schools with school treasurers, and we don't have a trainer. So they learn by the seat of their pants right now. We have risk management goes out and does audits, but there's really no training when a school treasurer comes on board. So that would be this person's job. And the student transportation trainer, we have one in the district now, and with our bus driver turnover, we need an additional. So that list of administrative staffing comes to $663,000. Total for all new programs and initiatives is $3.3 million.
Because school is about to start, is there any way to get a position approved prior to the budget so that we can have them in place? For instance, transportation seems really, really important that we may need to consider because school is starting and they're going to need to know those routes and be properly trained on walking those buses so that we won't leave kids in the car.
Well, very similar to how you approved the Greenbush contract. I mean, you can always approve a position and it will move from a new program up to sustaining because you had approved it already.
Is there a critical need for us to have a transportation person in place, a trainer going on right now?
I don't know right now. I just know we are hiring a lot of new bus drivers, so I don't know if the one we have now, what his workload is.
Probably need to find that out before we make a decision. So our next meeting is tentatively Wednesday, and if you're interested in making that request,
Before we leave today, I mean, we have a couple.
you have to ask him if he's capable of finding it out.
But if not, then I would want to know sooner than later so that we would have adequate coverage.
We're going to have Chief step out and call Miguel.
Because that just seems pretty critical. Every year it seems that there's a situation with our kids around the buses. And I really want to make sure that we have our stuff in place when the school starts for our kids.
Now, and I'm just for rhetorical purposes, is the situation due to lack of training or to neglect? And probably you don't until you have a situation.
I used to go do a training for a bus driver during my heyday to drive a school bus. And the trainer made sure that we understood we had to walk that bus before you leave or get off or whatever. So to me, in my mind, that has to be a training situation to where you have to notice that, look under the seats. That's a safety training, a safety thing that sometimes, in my mind, if someone's overwhelmed, the in-depth of those bus drivers is really deep.
And it's against the law.
Right, but it's really deep to train bus drivers. And if you have a whole bunch coming in and you're relying on one person to train all of those, of course, you know, it would be, like you said, neglect possibly. But we don't want to not do our due diligence in making sure that that trainer, if they're sick or if something happens to where they can't come in, that we don't have that person available to take in and take over.
So you're saying we have one trainer right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
And how long have we had that one trainer?
That I do not know.
Have we had problems?
We've had
In the past, last year, we left kids the first day of school?
Or subsequently on the wrong stop or the wrong.
So the biggest part is, I would say, before they can be allowed to actually have the route, do the bus, they have to be trained, go through the training. And so there may be people who are waiting. So we would have to do substitutes or double up on routes,
Yes.
that type of thing, I'm assuming.
Or you had your lead drivers that do the routing, they have to drive. Or you double up the routes till we get enough drivers through the initial training class to get their CDL.
Okay, so we're not denying the importance, but am I to assume this was not pushed up to a top priority point?
So all of this is part of what we would call success. We would love to push them all up,
Yeah.
but we have to bring them.
There's a
through.
process.
There's a process. So that's
the reality of it.
So we can move on.
So we can move pending he's back. Do you want to give a, Mr. Covington, do you want to?
Speaking with Director Mr. Martin over at Transportation, he said currently right now his training is about 300 to 1. They want to cut that in half with the other person so that we have more touches on individual specific training, and then redevelop the curriculum to expand that to have more training and a little bit different that kind of falls into the play of developing the workforce.
Based on the chief's report, I want to make a motion that we go ahead and approve the student transportation trainer as what position did you say, until we get supplement, or go ahead and approve this position?
For hiring.
For hiring.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Have job description? Do you ready to post?
Yes.
As of?
If you vote approve, it'll be out there tomorrow.
We need to know this. And posted where?
our website under careers.
Website?
And individuals will have to refresh. They have to go, and if they're looking for it, they have to refresh or do a search for student transportation trainer if they're wanting to apply. Because our system is the part, if you put in a new job, it goes down, and then once we put in another one, it goes down. So if a school puts in a teacher or whatever, it continues to go down, so they have to refresh, they have to look for the position.
And maker of the motion, did you want to amend it to not only have it placed on the website, any local newspapers, if it's an urgency in your mind?
I believe that they will handle that. I don't feel like I need to put it in the motion. I believe that our...
Help me understand, if we don't say call or star Dos Mundos, it doesn't go there, correct?
I don't know exactly where HR advertises all our classified positions. I do know they use other venues other than our website. I don't have a list of the ones they use.
I believe that they'll sense the urgency and know where to place it. So.
Okay, so if it doesn't happen, then it's on your motion.
Oh, right.
All right. Been moved and seconded. Discussion has, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passed. That's your direction. I just got a question, and I don't know why I'm chuckling. If a school treasurer is not doing the work, why aren't they terminated?
They have been, some have been.
Some have been, okay.
Some have.
Can I make a statement on that? I ran into a secretary, and she informed me that she's the treasurer, she's the secretary, she's the attendance clerk. She does it all.
At elementary school,
yes.
yes.
And she didn't have any help. And she felt like for all the stuff I'm doing, I deserve more pay, and I have a lot. I do my job. She was, and from what I hear, she's doing a phenomenal job. But she just felt like we should get something extra, because candy sales, I got to do all of that. And we're saying they're training treasurers, but these people are the secretaries. You got a number of people doing 10 or 12 jobs. So how do we work that out?
As part of that compensation analysis, we will be looking at those positions.
And part of that, you also have to come back and recommend.
Oh, yes. We have to bring back any compensation adjustments.
And then, question to Mr. Goheen. Do you advise us if a position is not according to that salary schedule?
Let me make sure I understand what you're asking. In other words, I think what your compensation committee, or compensation consultant, if I understand correctly, is going to do is analyze the positions to determine whether those positions are paid appropriately and compared to market rates. I think that's what is happening there. As to whether a specific individual is performing job duties that are consistent with the position description.
No.
Is that what you're asking? No, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Then if Mr. Covington is recommended to be the Carol Lever's position, and it's recommended above this position, do you advise us to note that, or is that on us?
I think you should note that if you're making changes to the positions, if that's what you're asking.
No, it's not a change. You just recommend a higher pay than the salary.
Right. The higher pay would have to be approved by the board.
Right. It will come through on the HR report.
But how do we know it's going to be? Is it? Do you advise us, or do we do it? Are we responsible totally alone? Does that? Let me answer it this way. Is that include in your job description to advise us as to whether the recommended salary of X person is off of that salary schedule?
I think that would come from the consultant. I certainly could review it and see if I agree with it, if that's what you want me to do.
No.
But I think that comes
after that consultant's done his work, after we've approved X, that salary schedule is sitting right there. Now, Mr. Covington's been, I won't use Mr. Covington. The gavel has been recommended to be paid $61,421. Mm-hmm. But that position doesn't pay but $40. Is it in your job description to advise us?
Well, based upon what the consultant determines, what would be appropriate is you guys would change the position amount.
It has nothing to do with the consultant. I'm talking about once a salary schedule is in place.
Right. Oh, if somebody comes up and says, and you're trying to pay somebody beyond what the consultant says,
Yes.
I misunderstood.
That was in your
I
job
understand
description?
now. It would not necessarily be within my job description. I'd really be on the board to be flagging what that position is, but also you guys should require or have it as a requirement anytime you're approving a salary to have a statement that's consistent with the salary structure that you guys have approved. That should be part of the recommendation you should ask for from the person making the recommendation. So the HR report should show that. That'd be where I'd put it if I were you.
Would you please note that, Ms. Westphal, in the minutes for future reference?
Yeah, because there's no way to fly spec it otherwise. You just need something that verifies that it is in fact within the salary structure you've approved.
Question on your lead psychologist, please. You say currently we have 27 psychologists serving 30,000 students in the co-op. This lead psychologist would serve the co-op? So it serves Piper as well as the other?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because as the running of the co-op, they supplement funding to help us run the program. And so all our resources are commingled, that we don't say, well, these are KCK's psychologists and you all go support the co-op. They're all intermingled. So they will support KCK and the co-op.
So is this salary coming straight out of our portion?
Yes.
So I guess this is a generic question, and who handles, she's not here. There was an issue, and I'll bring it up, and with the dyslexia issue. There was a teacher at Piper that was trained to, I'll say, test dyslexia, but was not utilized in our district, and was told because they're in Piper, they serve only Piper. So is that something we have to look closer into?
Yeah, each district can supplement the program with just their positions. So if they want to hire, like I said, someone to test dyslexia.
No, I'm just saying, if this leaves, you want to answer that?
I don't know if I know the specific answer, but there's a difference between teachers. The teachers are all hired by the separate districts.
Right.
It's the ancillary services that are done by the co-op. So the psychologists, the therapists, probably missing some people, paras maybe. Those are the folks that are hired by the co-op, actually hired by us because we're the parent district for the co-op. And then they provide services, those ancillary services, to the other districts that are part of the co-op. But the teachers, if it was a teacher that was doing that, the teachers are hired by the specific school districts.
So why would we hire lead psychologists to serve 30,000 students?
Well, the psychologists are not teachers under that part of the program. The psychologists would fall in that category under the ancillary services provided to the special ed kids in the different districts under the co-op. So as I understand it, the lead psychologist would be over, for lack of a better word, psychologists that are working for just USD 500 kids and also for students in, is it both Bonner and Piper, I think? I think they're both still in the co-op.
Yeah, because Turner does their own.
Yeah, Turner does their own.
So currently, we don't have anyone who oversees psychologists. So that's what the rationale. They'll also serve students, so it's not that they just have an office where they are just doing paperwork. They will also do the psychological testing, whatever their job description is, but it would also be the point person. If another psychologist has questions, or if there's a concern if they are going over testing and let's say someone is having some difficulty with the translations, they could call on that lead psychologist to also sit in on that meeting. That's what the lead would do. But we already have psychologists, but we just need someone with the back who can lead them.
So do our school psychologists serve our students, or they also serve the co-op?
I think they serve both. I think that the psychology services, it's a little confusing because I think under a negotiated agreement, I think the psychologists are included in the negotiated agreement as teachers defined by our negotiated agreement. But I believe psychology services are considered ancillary for purposes of the special ed co-op. So I believe that psychology services are being provided by us through that cooperative arrangement. Funding for those cooperative services gets farmed out to the different districts that are part of the co-op, but we carry the management load of that.
I know, because we're the biggest, and all funds flow through us. Seems a little lopsided, in my opinion. Have we had the conversation, and of course she's not here, with sharing this with the other two districts?
We have not.
No. Who manages student records now?
I believe that's under Lisa Garcia.
So what does this position do?
It would handle all.
So the student records, in addition to master scheduling, we don't have a master scheduler for our district. So it would be in support of our master scheduling in student records. So for instance, when, say, if someone is wanting records, they've already graduated, they're wanting those at the district level, that person actually does that. That's what that person would do. If there's an instance where individuals are not in school and they're looking for records, this person would actually help oversee this. We have people that are on our campuses that schedule kids, but we don't have anyone who oversees this. So sometimes our master schedule are off because we don't have one person who is overseeing the master schedule, basically. And so that would just be one component, but on a daily, it would be more of the records, student records.
Do you have the software to handle this, or you got another?
There is one at the student records, yes. So they have that one, but when it comes down to who pulls that information down, they're required, we need a key person that if they're not getting the communication at the school or the state, then that one person here can make those recommendations and call, and who can be the guru.
So this person has access to 22,000 records?
Yes, if needed.
Through the central office?
But they'll also be, like you said, the master schedule, which we've talked about for the last couple of years, to help our high schools get their schedules together so the kids can hit the classes as they need them. But it's a lot more complicated than it looks at first glance.
I mean, one thing that we need to fix is our high school, because technically a student can be finished with all of their coursework by the first semester of their senior year, and all the others is electives. And so, as I was telling you before, we don't want all of our seniors out doing internships. We don't have enough internships for all of our kids to do, and not every student should be doing an internship. So when we have kids who are literally saying that they don't have a class, they actually don't, because they finished all of their core classes by their, if they were to follow the schedule as it is now, they would be finished by actually this, I think it's the first semester.
Yes, first semester, senior.
First semester of their senior year.
But you would think, since we have Diploma Plus, you could get them enrolled in those classes so we would have more than 2 people graduating with an associate's degree. Because I guess that's the part that always threw me off. If we have this, they got their credits, what they need to graduate, then they should be enrolled in Comp 101, taking Western Civ. I don't know if they still call all that. Yeah, they're doing all that. Yes, that they should be coming out. You would think.
Right.
I never figured that one out.
That's where the master scheduler will help with that. Exactly. Someone who can make sure that there's classes available, and then if we're sharing, like when we get more foreign languages in, if we're sharing foreign language teachers from school to school, they're going to have to coordinate their schedules.
Well, I don't have a problem with the master scheduler, but something's wrong with Diploma Plus. If those kids aren't in these, even beyond that, they're supposed to have a pathway. That's a whole nother debate.
So we've had that
It's something wrong.
You're correct. That's why we had students who had, I think, 43 college credits, but were not able to graduate because they weren't doing a pathway. And so they just took random courses at the community college. So we are actually taking a look into that.
So this position will try to address that or
Well,
not?
no, we actually have Diploma Plus writing the pathways. And so then those will be dispersed out to our counselors and making sure, and then Diploma Plus, of course, would be able to give more information about the pathway and the courses that they should take and when they should take those courses. And so they would work in conjunction.
Not to get into an executive session issue, the Executive Director for School Services, asterisk, previously approved, is it a position, is it hired? Is that
one we approved and hired. That one hadn't been moved up.
Right.
Okay, so that's been hired, so you can whisper the person to us later, so we don't violate any laws. Okay.
So in summary, our new initiatives for case for investment between sustaining, investing in our employees and the new programs came to the $12.4 million. And we went through the section where we aligned those new initiatives to our board priorities with safe and respectful learning environment. And you see each of the initiatives that supported that focus and high performance workforce. Expectation for student achievement, and you can see that some of these satisfied more than one focus area. Good stewards of resources and financial accountability was ranked 4, followed by communications and positive community relations.
Now, is there an evaluation expectation for each new position so that we can reevaluate whether those positions met the goals?
Yes. We will have evaluations.
For the manager who supervises that person, yes.
And it goes back to the original question asked, Mr. Goheen, how do we get, while I think you say state statutes require evaluations?
Yes.
How do we ensure that they are completed?
You mean how does the board ensure they're required, they're completed, or?
Well, who would be responsible for enforcing state law?
Well, yeah, ultimately your superintendent and ultimately the board. I mean,
okay.
But state law requires evaluations to be completed at least for certified staff by dates certain, depending on how many years they've been with the district, and that should be documented in their personnel files and should occur. I mean, it doesn't occur every year. I know that.
Right. So the question was not should, and the question to Mr. Covington was, will there be, and Dr. Faust, these are new positions, and they cost how much? 3.4 million or whatever. So we're asking, how do we hold us accountable for 3.4 million worth of labor cost? And if you say evaluations are by state law, how do we do that? We know they haven't been done in some cases. How do we do it?
I mean, you could just ask for a report and say, we know that the first group's due in November, the second group's due in February. You could ask for a report in December or in March and say, we want a report from HR that says all the evaluations are completed.
Mm-hmm. How do we know of the new positions where they fall into those timelines? You will establish them for us? You will give them
So I won't give, if you ask for it, but it's not something that we just hand out, because that's actually you have to have trust in me that I will make sure that HR is following the
law?
So HR will publish, they give the principals, the managers, they send out emails to them and say X are due this month. They give them indicators of who hasn't been done. And so then when they're not done, that's a conversation. If it's on the school side, then it's Dr. Hookfin who we talk with. If it's on the academic side, it's Alan. If it's, let's say, if it's communications, if it's title, all the others, it's Linkus, if it's the officers. So they're all under there, but it's an umbrella where HR does send that information out, and we do have conversations about that. Making sure that people do it. It's just not something that I've been accustomed to given the board because we handle those things. If it's not being done, then there is a proper protocol and you get to see the end result of what happens. Now, if you want that, I mean.
Well, I'm just asking, if it's a state law, the conversation we're having right now with these new positions, how do we know they're being done? I mean.
How do you know the new positions are being evaluated? Is that what you're asking?
Well, we'll start there. Again, we're investing 3.x million, and that's a made-up number, because it could be 9 million or whatever, in labor cost. Now, for me, it's not a matter of trust, it's state law. So how do we ensure state law is being followed?
I mean, state law, how do you know? I don't know if you ever know for sure, but by board policy and consistent with that state law, you've directed that the evaluations be done by administration in accordance with the state law requirements. And
I guess that's what I was asking. How do we know what comes up in October and what comes up in February? How are we supposed to know that?
So I don't know if you want to know. That's my question. I don't think you want to know. If I know,
past each other.
I know. No. But you're saying, how do you know? I know when those things take place. So it's not that
we can generically say we want the evaluations that's due in October, and it could be A, B, and D.
Quite honestly, I have a couple questions. Are they electronic or are they paper?
So they're electronic.
So if there's electronic, if there's a report that you may decide that you want in October, I think that would be appropriate to say, I would like to know what evaluations are done. From the board perspective, again, that's Dr. Faust's brain, and we have hired him to do his job. If we want to evaluate him or ask him a question as far as evaluations are done, then we as board members can ask him directly. Are the evaluations being done? What percentage? Et cetera, et cetera. But to say that all of a sudden after, and I've been on the board like almost 2 years now, that, we want to report to see paper or evaluations to prove that they're being done, that goes back to being a trust issue of us not trusting that Dr. Faust is doing the evaluations. If we want to know, are they done or how many was done last year, again, I believe that's a question you would pose to Dr. Faust rather than saying the board wants to see a full-blown report of who was evaluated in October, who's evaluated every month. That's going way overboard.
Well, and for you specifically, in asking the question, and I guess your memory I will call into question that when you asked to see evaluations a year ago, you were lied to say that you could not, and that board policy does state board evaluations.
And that was because I asked, was an evaluation done to the superintendent at the time?
No,
and I had sent her questions regarding the quality based on the results, based on what happened, and no action were taken. So because of that information that no action is being taken on a failing school, that's when additional questions were asked.
Okay.
But prior to getting there, the initial, it didn't start off that way. When you see that someone's not holding people accountable, which we see that it's being done now, but previously people were not held accountable, principals were not held accountable for failing schools. And so other administrations were not being held accountable. Through this administration, I see accountability happening, which is why I'm saying that Because of the difference, there's a different approach that I would take, meaning
That's good.
what evaluations are being done, are they completed, just as a question, but to feel like it's not being done and now we want to report often.
My question was directed to legal about the state law. I wasn't asking specifics, so for clarification, I was asking, how do we know state law is being adhered to? I never said lack of trust or anything like that. I said, how do we know state law is adhered to? And that's an answer I'm not sure if Greg gave or not, but that still, there are different ways to get to it. We can put it in the evaluation of the superintendent. I wasn't going down that path. I was just going down the path that here, as investing millions of dollars in new positions, how do we know that these goals have been met, that these positions are, they may need to be reevaluated, but to have no feedback, that is not a good, in my opinion, steward of responsibility of funds. That's all I was asking. How do we know the state law is being adhered to? That's what I know. I can read the state law, and the state law says evaluations are required. How do we find out? It doesn't cast any doubt on anyone's professionalism. I just asked a generic question. How do we know? And we're investing $9–10 million. How do we know? So we have yet to. That's something we need to work. We'll work on. And I'm saying that's a board. That's not an individual, because I don't need to know a name. If that position of world language thing, is it working out as we designed? It's a brand new thing. You don't know if it's working like you want it or not. And I just threw in Mandarin Chinese. We may not have any students who want to take Mandarin Chinese.
When that curriculum comes and when we're asking for those reports.
Exactly.
But it's not going to come through the evaluation directly. It will come from student achievement, student. Okay,
however we do it, I just asked them how state law is adhered to.
Right.
And so we'll approach it anyway, but that's something to figure out, because there is a state law and we need to know how it is adhered to.
Yeah, I mean, state law requires annual or after they've been here for a certain number of years, every 3 years evaluations of staff. So that's state law.
All staff or just?
All certified staff.
All certified. Are these all certified or some of these classified?
They're both.
They're both. Okay.
Classified's different. You have a different policy for classified, but there's no state law for classified.
Okay, so just be certified. Right. So that would be one answer. If world language specialist is not a certified, they never get evaluated.
Well, by board policy, they should, but not by state law.
They're all
Right.
So they may not have just evaluated the individuals, but they get an evaluation. Everyone who's an employee of the school district is supposed to get an evaluation. And if they're not, there is a process where workforce development can go right in and pull who has not been evaluated. We had that conversation in November. Actually, Greg came and trained all of our supervisors.
And emphasized the deadline.
And yes, all of those. So he's in, I mean, we're all in tandem on this. So it's not something that they don't know the dates. They know the dates. And when they don't meet the dates, there are repercussions for them not meeting those dates.
I just think that last year when Dr. Faust came on, we really didn't have an opportunity to really give him to be able to take fully control. And this is, for me, this is a time in which his programs, his directives, everything is being implemented. And I think we have to trust that he's going to do what is necessary. We keep looking back at what wasn't done, and I know that that wasn't good, but let's start looking forward and keep recognizing that, like Dr. Yeager said, that if we find that we need to know that, you can go personally to him and let him know as a part of his report to us, then we can get that information. But I trust that he's going to do what is necessary, and we have to make sure that we keep an open mind and allow him to do what is necessary. The staff that is certified and classified, because there are new positions, they're going to do what he is expecting them to do. And I don't think it's necessary that we need to put it into board policy. State law requires that annual evaluation. It'll be done. And we should just accept it at that and let him do what is necessary and support him as a board. But I do think trust is most important in all of this. That has to be maintained. Yes, we need to make sure that we follow the state law, but we trust that we're going to work collectively together as a board with our superintendent, and everything is going to fall into place.
And that's his job. We have to trust him to do his job. If he fails, then we take care of it then. But we can't be there watching every little thing. He has to trust the people that he hires to implement the plan. We have to trust him. He's the only person we hire, and we've got to trust him.
Good, and he's our only employee.
He's our only employee.
And again, this is where
do his job.
We have to
trust is one thing, but you know, I also have a hat of a legislator. The law also is there. We cannot ignore it, and I'm not lacking in any trust. I just asked a generic question: how do we know the law is adhered to? That's all I asked. And so I believe that it kind of got a little goofy out there, in my opinion. But the point comes back to, if Greg is given the training, then there's also, as you say, there's a consequence if the law is not passed. If the law is not adhered to, then we need to know the law is not adhered to. And as a lawmaker, and as a person who, I'll put this over to you, Mr. Goheen, as our legal attorney. I think and maybe it isn't in your job description, you are to advise us of the law. Is that in your job description? So, hey, we're just talking legal here. This is just legalese here. And so it doesn't, this person is not in the conversation as this person. The position,
superintendent.
but not saying you're not a person. But no, I'm discussing the law. Next.
And then I just want to say, yes, we do have to trust each other. But if a person has a question, he or she should be able to ask that question. And not everybody gets so offended, because we're living in an age where it's a slippery slope. If we look at what's happening nationally, you can't question anything, and people tend to take it the wrong way. If you ask, you have every right to ask. It may not be what I want you to ask, but you have that right, and we need to give them that right to ask whatever they want to ask, without it always being a point of contention. You can ask the question. Just like when I talk, ask. You have the right to ask. We may not agree, but I want you to ask questions, and it shouldn't be a point of contention. I just want to throw that out, that we should be able to ask. And we're all adults, we're all responsible. We're going to agree to disagree, but I should be able to ask the question, and we should be able to get a response, whether you like it or not. I might not agree with what you say, but I think you have the right to ask it, and that's what it's all about.
Review of all funding sources, our state aid projection has not changed. We're still under the impression we would get almost $9.1 million for new money from the state aid. So if we look at our maximum use of the funds to balance the budget, the total case for the investment came to the $12.4 million. We redirected $3.3 million and expect to get $9.1 million in new money. So we have balanced the general funds budget. Any questions on the general, other questions on the general fund budget?
I'll have specific when we go into departments, so we can go to, which is a whole nother category down below, but let's go capital budget.
The mill levy, we project, generates about $10.5 million, and you see the projects on the right of how we would spend the annual $10.5 million on reoccurring maintenance issues. I If you want me to go down the whole list, I can. It's just to be a reading.
Well, let me throw this out, and this is out, I'm throwing this in view of the Moody's downgrade, that, okay, where is the contingency budget, contingency fund balance now?
We had 15 million
Okay, we're sitting on 15 million in the contingency fund.
for the general fund.
In the general fund. Now, we are or we are not utilizing any of it for anything.
We're using $900,000 to pay for the 17 social workers.
So if Moody's came in today, they would say, and it's general, basic math, you got 14 million left. All right. And they're saying, they're suggesting that this is too low to maintain, to keep the same rating.
They're just looking at the trend of our cash, and it's going this way.
Right. And kind of go back to your history discourse. Part of the explanation is that we decided we wanted to use social workers.
Correct.
And
it was a purpose decision.
And I would like to look back at the record, but I'm not sure we said take it out of contingency fund. But it doesn't matter. Okay. Now, you know, we have selective memory, all of us. So I get that. There's also, was that the only thing coming out of contingency dollars?
From the
last
18,
year?
19, yes. If I remember correctly, that was the only thing I saw.
Okay, okay. So, but that we had been spending out of it, spending down. Now, help me, Greg. What does the law say about the percentage we are of the budget we are to? It's capped as we can't have any more than.
Well, I think they removed the cap. I don't think there's a requirement as to what it's supposed to be or not supposed to be, as it currently sits, if I'm understanding correctly.
Right.
There used to be a percentage that.
It was 8.
Yeah, I think it was 8 or 9. But I don't think that exists anymore. I think they removed that.
The 8% is what Moody's recommends to keep your bond rating.
Okay. And so what is 8% of our 300 million?
Well, 10% is 36. So we're not even close to 8%.
So what's the magic number?
For Moody's? Not to see a decline. They didn't say the dollar amount. They just say the trend is going the wrong way.
I guess my question is then, if there is, could you give us that number so that we know that some of these expenses or expenditures, if we continue to take from the contingency fund, we're digging a hole for ourselves?
Well, you're going to have to take, because the state is telling us to take.
But right now, that's not mandated.
Right. And we had a conversation with
Yeah, you already
Chuck.
said that with Dale Dennis, and they said to KSSB, to all the superintendents in meeting, that you all should spend down because those legislators will come in and grab your money.
Yes.
And that's real. But between now and June 30th,
yes,
law hasn't been passed.
Correct.
24 million.
24, okay. So, but we're sitting on 14.
Right.
Because 8 times 3 is 24. Basic math. Well, we'll never get to 24. Okay, so you're saying then of the capital,
the amount we get every year
from
the mill levy,
okay,
we should generate $10.5 million, and the projects on the right spends that $10.5 million every year.
So I guess that's my question. In view of, and realistically, if we put 10 more million into the contingency fund, there'd be an awful lot of things we cannot do. Specifically, the 10.5 of capital budget items, right?
I'm not following the question.
Okay, if Moody says you should have 8% in your contingency, you've got 14 now. If we took the 10.5 that the money we get, don't spend on anything, put in contingency fund, we got 24.
That's general versus.
Right.
staff.
So we can't put it there?
Board action to do that.
You can't put it there.
No.
So where can we get $10.5 million
Save
from?
it out of your general fund.
All of the state aid and put it all back in
Right.
there. You wouldn't be able to spend
You have to reduce
anything.
positions in the
Or
district.
take it from some other source?
No, this one's all for general.
Right.
The contingency is just for the general, what we just went over.
Right.
So the 9 million that's.
Yeah, the state aid, but we can get it from someplace else?
You can't, because you can't mix budgets.
So we have no more money any place that could come from out here to go into the contingency?
No, ma'am.
All different budget items.
I know that. Is that correct, Greg?
Yeah, you have to take it out of the general some way. You'd have to figure out
That's
some.
internal racism.
It was.
Yeah.
I know that.
I know, internalized racism.
Yeah, because the capital, you can kind of think of it almost as like, they're accounted for. They have to be spent on capital dollars, and they can't
Yeah,
go
I wanted
back
to
into the
bring that
general
up
fund
first.
in that regard.
Okay, good answer. All right, so is there any reason, if we're going to get 10, is there any reason to save some of the 10.5 that we're getting through the mid-level?
No, ma'am. We have needs.
You're going to get this every year.
Well, on the furniture replacement, is it necessary? I mean, considering we do have, for example, there was I don't know if that was a china cabinet, I think, or some kind of cabinet you had in your room that you moved out in the hallway. Well, is it some way we have all these people who are moving, we've closed stuff to use some of the furniture there and not necessarily spend $300,000 on furniture if we have furniture available? I'm just asking.
Right. So that's also an estimate for furniture. That's not necessarily saying you're going to spend all of that. But yes, we do furniture that is if someone, I'm sure there's a warehouse somewhere where we keep furniture where they can
Like
come and
when
tag it.
we
and
had,
put it in school.
I think 9 or 10 trailers out in front of Slagle with furniture. We recycled a lot of that, the ones that we could use.
I didn't know if it was some way we could do that without spending 300.
And that's just an estimate.
Okay.
Well, I would question whether we have 10.5 million of needs. Perhaps there's 10.5 million of some of wants, but to say that every dime we get, we have to spend, that's just rhetorical. But I would question that. But that, is there any reason why the Wyandotte Construction Academy couldn't come out of the bond money? Was that not identified?
It wasn't in the current bond, but we need to have a meeting on the rest of the dollars from either the savings or the interest of our bond dollars, because we really need to move forward in spending those dollars. I think we got to have 90% of it encumbered by November.
Yeah.
So probably.
So perhaps that 250,000 could come out of the bond money and be a savings. I'm on the second page now. Oh. I'm sorry, I'm on the first page. Wyandotte Construction Academy, 250,000. I'm paper. Oh. Don't tell Dr. Yeager. I'm paper. He gave it to us, Dr. Yeager.
But while we're on slide 29, 27.
Okay, on 29. Excuse me.
The capital. 29 with the 10.5, that's just how it's encumbered. To say this is where the money is possibly going to go, that doesn't mean that will all be spent. You just need to know that there's a line item. So in this particular budget for maintenance salaries,
the top three are the only ones that's must pay.
Right.
The others are projections.
Right.
Okay. I appreciate your honesty, and that's what I'm getting to. That if you're honest and straightforward, I appreciate that, instead of saying, you must have LED lighting. It would help, but we don't have to have LED lighting.
So let's say we had a rush of chillers that all went out. A lot of this will go to buy chillers.
Okay.
And these other things will get pushed down further.
Because here's where we run into, and I don't point my finger, I apologize for that. When then there is a bill paid, and I would last time I asked Dr. Yeager to remember, we took your insight as correct when you suggested that we not purchase a piece of software after it was purchased. And there was a firestorm because it had been allocated, it had been spent, and by law, we can say, no, we're not paying that bill because we have reconsidered. And that causes a little firestorm. That's what I would like for us to avoid. So when you say, yeah, we're setting this aside, you know, the other comment is that, well, and I'll ask, where's all the food cost in here? Well, they're budgeted. I was told, and I remind Ms. Humphreys, she and others stated, I don't want that level of detail. And my point was, I asked, where's $7,000 spent for a bakery, for 2 days catering? A lot of donuts. And the response was, I don't know what it's spent for, but it was budgeted. And so that's why I just, you know, going, and Ms. Drew, I'll give it to you that you agree. But Ms. Drew saying, we got to move forward. Hey, we're moving forward. But we don't want to run into that situation with your insight to say, you know what? That wasn't a cost and expenditure we should be making, and it was not well received. Our authority, but not well received. And I'm sure you remember.
And that was because, again, the wrong people were put
whatever the reason, I'm using the example of with forethought.
There's a difference.
Okay, you can.
There's a difference between having people in the wrong position just recommending things versus strategically recommending things that will put our children.
And all I'm saying, if it's set aside as an item, unless it's a budget what's the term, Mr. Covington? Reallocation that you bring to us. When then, if we were for any reason say, you know, don't do that bus rotation, which I'm going to say, we bought 8 buses recently. And so it's like, well, why do we need 4 more buses? If at that point we say, we're not going to pay for that bus. Firestorm. We don't need firestorms. And that's all. That's the point I'm making. New people, point well taken.
But the difference is, again, the difference in communication, the difference in bringing it to us.
And we're happy.
Is different.
And I don't deny you.
And so as we keep thinking about what happened in the past, this is a new administration, as you mentioned.
We're all human, Dr. Yeager.
Right, and I'm not debating that, but I'm saying we shouldn't go through nickel and diamond or going through every line item. We had this budget meeting, and we were able to ask every specific question on this, and we're going through it again.
Because it is state law, we are responsible for that.
We are responsible. We had a meeting to where we had questions and asked them. So we are going through line by line. When we already went through it, we asked our questions. Questions are coming up today, which again, we are responsible, but there's a difference between going through every single line item, looking and picking out, trying to figure out ways to discuss. If we're going through it, let's go through it and not have to worry about side conversations or calling out people to make a certain point. That's what I'm saying. Let's get through this budget and move forward.
Well, thank you. Next.
The second piece of the capital budget, we right now have $4.8 million of 18-19 funds that's available. And this is the recommendation to spend those dollars, with the top line being we would get $2 million of that back if we go ahead and do the network switches from our E-rate. And the rest, as you can see, is how we will spend what we call the capital contingency.
Well, I'll go back to the buses. We bought 8 new buses. Are you suggesting we get on a 4 per year schedule?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. miles and the age of our buses, we need to replace for a year.
This is just for 1 year.
Right.
Because we only do one-year budgets.
Yes, we have to do it again next year.
And then we will have this conversation perhaps of, perhaps the items that could go into the bond may be reconsidered going to the
Yes.
bond, and those would be
Correct.
savings.
Correct.
So I'd like for the record to reflect that conversation. And with the same conversation of Moody's was not, we did not get, let me say this, we didn't get Moody's downgrade before, when we had our group conversations, did we? We just got Moody's last week.
Correct.
So for me, in view of Moody's downgrade, that's serious. And if someone doesn't think it's serious, then that's problematic. But that in the attempt to be fiscally responsible, I still will ask you to what extent and what's the amount of North Central office renovations? I don't see it itemized. I'm on the paper, and I don't
The
see
North
it.
Central office renovation would come out of furniture, because that would be what we would be replacing. Are you talking about the central kitchen?
No, I'm talking about North Central office renovation. Under Parker Language Immersion School, that would be remodeling that school for, if there's anything for Parker Immersion, right?
You're not on the capital, that's in another budget.
I'm on this North Central office renovation under the capital budget.
Over here, so this is.
10.5 is up there. This is
on a
just,
different slide, we have to go all the way down.
okay. School nutrition.
Are you talking about something that's listed at the bottom of a page? Those are just possibilities.
Okay, okay.
So don't disregard those?
Yes, that's not part of the 10 and a half.
Do disregard.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not part,
No.
this is
This
what
is
we
all
wanna
this.
do with-
Yeah. That was other suggestions.
Okay, so that what you had a price by under one-time projects,
Right,
everything that you didn't have a price by, disregard.
right.
Okay.
If the 4.8 as
Right,
outlined
correct.
there, we didn't want to do, there were some things below it that we could do.
Okay.
Okay. So how are we supposed to know that? And by not discussing it, one could assume then we approved it.
Well, on the revenue, it says 4.859 and costs of 4.859. So there's no way to do anything below that. I don't have any money to pay for.
Yeah, because on here it's 4.759. So I'm using 4.8?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was updated after we first done it.
Laser version, we've gotten in trouble because we haven't read. And we didn't have these full discussions. Okay, so use this and not this. End of story.
Right, so what he's done, like we were talking about in our budget prep meeting, is those are options. But what you have here is that's what he's presenting. We're not trying to do a bait and switch.
No, nobody ever accused
So,
you of that.
but I mean, that's what, when you're saying, how will we know? What you'll know is this is what, if you're approving this right here that's on this slide is what you're approving. What you have is additional information
Right.
in there, but we're only going through, you have additional information basically in yours, but what we are approving is
Just that.
what's on these slides. That's not on the slide.
Okay. Next. So what is the total capital budget we have?
10.5 recurring from the mill levy
Uh-huh.
and 4.8 of contingency. So we have 14 for next year.
We hadn't spent, that's what we hadn't spent out of this year's 10.5, this is what was left over.
Okay, okay.
In the past, that's how we paid for the schools we built.
Correct.
Yeah. Before the bond issue.
Do you have a comment to make, Ms. Humphries?
In the past, that's how we saved money to build the elementary schools before we passed the bond issue. We saved up capital outlay funds for several years, and then we built McKinley. We saved up capital outlay, we built Mark Twain. That's how we did it before we passed the bond issue.
So what is our total expenses for capital budget, please? That we are approving.
15.3 million that we're approving. 10.5 plus the expenses of the contingency of 4.8, which is 15.3.
4.8 is what we've saved out of our 10.5. We only spent half of it from last year.
Well, not just last year.
Well,
from years.
build up. Okay.
Yes.
So we're getting 10.5 new.
Yes.
And the 0.48 is it savings? Yes. So we are, help me do the math. And what am I adding, what am I subtracting?
You adding the new money of 10.5, and we outline how we're going to expend the 10.5. Then we also outline how we want to spend the 4.8. So we put $15.3 million worth of expenditures on the budget.
Okay.
With 15.3
so
million
we're down to
revenues.
zero.
Yes, it would take you down to zero.
Thank you.
If we spend all the money that's in the 10.5.
But by virtue of us saying we approve it, we've given you authorization to spend.
That is correct.
And so if at a different time we come back and say, you know what, I don't think we want to spend those 4 buses, firestorm, expect a firestorm, correct? Thank you.
That's correct. If you approve what's on these slides, that is our authority to go forward.
School nutrition budget.
As you see, we listed the categories.
Sorry. Does this body need a break?
It would be nice to find it.
Well,
could you?
Yes, ma'am.
Please allow a 10-minute, 5-minute? Can you do 5?
Come try 5.
I'm talking past you. 5 or 10?
10 would probably make it easier for everyone.
Okay. We will recess for 10 minutes. Do you need a motion? No.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, again, the conversation I had with Mr. Covington during the break, explaining to him, first, this is Kansas. Things may be done differently in Kansas than in other states. Secondly, because we may or may not have had a full discussion in both teams, as well as the responsibility for every dime, according to the lawyer for KSB. We have 2 more general, big budgets, nutrition and library,
yes,
right? And then we will address the departments, but that because Mr. Covington said he doesn't have them on screen, they're in our library and in our executive. So, thank you, Mr. Covington.
Yes, ma'am.
Nutrition.
School nutrition. On the screen, you see there are 17-18 actuals, what we adopted for the 18-19 budget, plus we're proposing for the 19-20 budget. I would tell you the salary increase is to cover the 2% plus the beginning pay of to the 13, and we'll see that on the new initiatives. The benefit increase is the health increase for the employees. You can see a food increase for food, and prices are going up a little for supplies. You see a big drop in equipment. In the 18-19, we bought the equipment for the new central kitchen. So we won't need that same line going forward. And so you'll see our proposed budget is $18,247,000. Our revenue for sales is 17.3 million, and we had 947,000 in contingency, and we must adopt the budget in balance. As you can see, the revenue equals the expenditures.
Now, your use of contingency is the same contingency across the board? When you say contingency here,
yes,
you're speaking to contingency
yes,
the other, because the term would mean something.
Yes. And I must say, these are projections. And as you can see, we spent 14 million in 17-18, but you have to look at the revenue and then make them balance. So I'm sure we would not spend $18 million.
And this is another point. The amount that we approved last year, because this process is not a true to the penny process.
Correct.
We may have approved in 17-18 1.5 million in salary and benefits, but what was actually spent was 1.2.
Yes.
Because then when we look back at the approved budget, the numbers are different.
Exactly.
Okay.
They should probably
but not that we're not considering any bait and switches. We just read numbers.
Right.
But recognize actually everything has to figure up at the end of the year.
You start with projecting your sales, and if you project 17 million in sales, you should outline the revenue.
Because that's one thing the state will do.
Part of it's going to drop to contingency.
You will be audited.
Yes.
Okay.
So the new initiatives for child nutrition, as I said before, to classify everybody get a 2%, and changing the beginning pay to $13 an hour cost us $403,000. The longevity for his staff is only $12,000 a year. Our staff in that department don't stay around too long. And so his new investment in our employees is $415,000. His new programs, we need to hire an operations manager down at the new kitchen. We need to hire 10 food assistants and 1 warehouse supervisor that we upgraded from a manager to a supervisor. So those costs are $186,000. And that was a total investment of $601,000 in child nutrition.
Are we still using day labor, labor max?
Yes, when he needs subs, yes.
Is that figured in here?
It would be in the contract services line, purchase services.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you had mentioned, and I don't know if you were just saying something for the future, that maybe in order to keep staff longer, that we could hire them during the summer?
We did that this year.
Okay.
We hired bus drivers and child nutrition workers to help our custodial staff. So we employed them an extra month, hopefully, so they wouldn't go out and get another job and then decide to stay at that job instead of coming back to the school system.
But I didn't know if it was something you want to open up to everyone to try to keep them, so that way they would sort of like be a full-time, full-year employee.
We would do the same program again next summer.
Okay. So is there a set number it's offered to anyone who works?
I can't remember the exact number. I think we targeted 150. I can't remember the exact number, but we didn't reach the target.
You did not?
We did not reach the target.
This is both food and bus drivers?
Yes, ma'am.
Because when I asked some people, now again, I'm just quoting what I heard. Now, I said, were you aware? And they said no. So again, I'm just repeating what I was told. I'm just the messenger, so don't kill me so quickly.
Well, we sent out
but I didn't know if they knew.
To employees to try to get them to come.
Okay, but
anyone in that facility.
Okay.
We directly contacted them, so they may have chosen not to respond.
Okay. So it will be a possibility for next year as well? Okay, gotcha.
So how do you do bus drivers? We had passed legislation to allow that. How'd you do bus drivers, since we didn't need all bus drivers? We had to pass legislation to allow hiring bus drivers during the summer.
Well, we took the bus drivers from summer school. The bus drivers that drove summer school, when they got off the bus, Instead of them sitting around doing nothing, we employed them in the custodial services department, and then they went and drove the buses back home.
That probably was not the legislative intent to hire them as custodians, but if there was no clear language in prohibiting it, then it was permitted.
Yes, ma'am.
And honestly, I don't remember I don't think there was any direction given to districts as to how to hire them during the summer.
Next is the public library's budget.
Can and I'm sorry, I didn't mean for you.
No problem, ma'am.
If you were a secretary, could that be an option? Let's say I'm not hired to work, but I'm willing to do janitorial work.
Always.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it would limit them. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, just for the summer.
So you would have to apply to be a custodial
Yes.
Employee.
Right. We advertised the position.
Okay, cool.
And once again, those are only advertised on the web?
And we emailed. I want to say we tweeted, I think, but I know definitely we reached out to them specifically. All of those employees got the information.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And let me just ask this because I'm going to ask. If at a certain point we feel that it is important to ask that you advertise in area newspapers, what's the procedure?
You have to give us a budget first.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually more costly to advertise in those newspapers. For instance, there's one, correct me if I'm wrong.
We already saw it on the $120 for an ad. It could have been 6 lines.
And then where we can tweet it for free, we can send an email and create our own in-house marketing and send that out. That's free. I mean, it's not free, but it's our labor versus not everyone is now reading the newspaper. Yeah. So we try to reach those individuals.
Or radio. So when we get to communications, if that is a burning issue, then when we get to communication department, put some money there.
But I don't know if we hadn't even researched it to see, because that's not one of the areas that we've considered to be a hot topic in the newspaper. People just across the country are no longer reading the paper and newspaper. It's a certain population that reads it, but more people are on the social media platforms. And so what we're trying to do, we were just talking about that today in our cabinet meeting, getting rid of, or not rid of, but not using so much paper to give people, but to put it out there and direct people to it. So we will have to educate people on this is where it is.
That's true.
But the newspaper is costly. It's
Very.
extremely costly.
Trust me.
Okay, but then can we also keep in mind that everyone has internet? I know that's hard to believe in the 21st century. Some people can't afford it. So what about that segment, maybe that 20% or 25% who can't afford it? We got our kids, some of them sitting out trying to swipe somebody else's stuff because they figure somebody on the block has it and I can pick it up there.
Our kids have it. All of our kids, if they don't have internet, we did a campaign with Million Foundation Sprint. Where if they needed internet access free, all they had to do is state their claim, and we gave that to them at free of charge. So they got the internet access to them. So we've taken care of all our kids. You know, I'll be honest with you. Of course, we would love to meet 100% of the needs, but we just can never always think that way. So you have to think in generalities, and where do you get the biggest portion? And so individuals, you know, if they need to come to a career center, I'm not sure what they're called, where they're looking for employment, they go there. I will say this, and this is a Charles Faust thing, if you want to work, you'll hustle and find it. I just believe that. And I always tell people that we are doing everything in our means to put the position out there. But and I'm not being, not sensitive to those individuals who don't, but they can actually come to our building. If they're looking for those, if they want to go over to transportation and say, hey, how do I put in an application? They can do that. If they're wanting to come to the school, they want to come over here, food nutrition, they can go there and say, how do I put in an application? And we can give them that access. We just don't know. I don't think you'll ever get 100% everyone. But what we have to do is we get the majority of those individuals, and a lot of it comes, believe it or not, word of mouth. That's why we reach out to people and say, who can you recommend? So those bus drivers or those food nutrition who want to work this summer, some of that was word of mouth and saying, hey, they're hiring for this, and then some people just don't want to do it. They don't. I was actually looking in my Twitter feed to see the Twitter handle, but I can actually, Melissa's in the back to see if there was a tweet that we did for the food nutrition. There was. We did a tweet, and we put it out there. I think we put it on the website. It was everywhere that we usually reach and where we get our information. Again, like I said, I'm not being insensitive, but sometimes we have to we have to go to the workplace. If we're wanting to say, hey, I'm looking for this, how we can direct them, because we wanted to employ them. It wasn't that we were not wanting to, because they had some demands that they had to put on these buildings to make sure they were clean. Every building had to have the hedges trimmed. They had to have the mulch, touch-up paint, before those kids could walk in, because we believe in having a pristine building for our students. So we were looking for it. It wasn't a factor of, we're not going to hire you. That's not it. It was literally, come on, come all. We need you. We need the support, and that's where we are.
Perhaps we can continue this conversation later day, because we see J.E. Dunn advertising for jobs for Shawnee Mission in the Kansas City Call. So it's not newspapers are not an outmoded. They are, print material is very expensive. Radio may not. So from time to time we may want to.
J.E. Dunn has a huge budget.
You're not telling us. You've been here 5 minutes, remember?
We pay.
Oh yeah. That's a whole nother conversation. But still, we may want to have some conversations and a trial balloon. And again, print material is very expensive. Anybody who's running for office knows that. Go.
Okay. The public library's budget, same type format, except for this one you don't have to have it balanced, so that they can carry over their contingency. And so as you can see, the 17-18 actuals was 8.7. The adopted budget for 18-19 under different administration, they budgeted for part of their contingency. That's why you see the $7 million down on the supply line. It's not a requirement to balance the public library's budget. So if you look at the 19-20, their proposed expenditures is only 10.4, which included the 2% increase and the increase in benefits. And so 10.4 million is our total proposed expenditures. Our proposed revenue, as you can see, our levy rates did not change. And the county library board, all total, 11.339 million. So our revenue is higher than our proposed expenditures. So that $900,000 will automatically fall back to the contingency fund, where it's 11.5 now. If we spend all of the 10.4, it will still grow to 12.4 next year. But likely to spend in the 10.4, those are just estimates.
And while this is not on this page, Ms. Levers, we missed you on Tuesday, because the young lady and perhaps I didn't ask the questions correctly, but Ms. Levers or Mr. Covington, where does that conversation fit in here? Where's the 5% levy that the Wyandotte County Library Board approved? Where is that in this budget?
The 2.857 is what we had estimated for that contribution.
Okay.
And it went to like 3.0 something. So that number is a little greater now.
So this is not the correct number?
That was what we presented before.
This is what we presented.
Yes.
Now, I want to know, how does that Wyandotte County Library Board tell us how much to spend? How much to levy?
This is just the levy that they, from the pet districts. Are you talking about the pet district?
Pet district.
Yes. That's their contribution in order to the library in order for services to the pet districts. That's got they don't tell the board what levy. That's their levy, not the board levy.
So the KCK patron does not pay that?
No, not from the. I think you've asked for something, and they did make copies for me to share. If you
want
me to share that.
Ryan couldn't explain it, Mr. Goheen.
He may not have known. So basically what happens is there's a Wyandotte County Library Board that is separate and apart from this board. This board's boundaries are the same as the school district's boundaries. It's the Kansas City, Kansas Library Board. But rather than the Wyandotte County Library Board providing services outside of the Kansas City, Kansas boundary, they simply pay us money to provide those services. So they have a separate mill levy. They got a separate elected or appointed board, I can't remember which it is, that has nothing to do with us other than they give us money so that we allow people from Turner and Piper and Bonner to use our libraries. That's what it is.
Okay.
And we have a slightly different arrangement with Turner because we have a contractual arrangement with Turner Rec to actually physically operate a library in Turner.
Okay. So that amount should replace the 2.857?
Yes, ma'am.
And that amount should be what? Is it on this piece of paper?
No, that's not.
It's like 3.1 or something like that.
If I remember.
I think it's 3.1, something like that.
Is it on this piece of paper?
It is not. I don't know what this is.
It's on where?
It's on the last meeting when we approved it. It's not on this paper.
So that means then the total reoccurring is larger than 11.3.
Yes.
Yes.
By a million?
No.
You said 900,000?
Like 250,000.
250,000?
Mm-hmm. You take the 2.8 to the 3.1, about 250,000.
Okay, I see. So that when you publish, you're publishing the correct.
Yes.
So, board, I still think it's important that we ask and find out the real numbers. End of story. Is there are your salary schedules in our library? The library's salary schedules?
Is it in the library?
In our library.
Yes. We don't have certified, but we have professional salaries because we don't have teachers, within the public libraries.
Right.
The public school libraries is school salary.
Just talking about your employees?
Yes.
And those salaries are in our library, are posted. Do we have the salary schedule?
Yes.
No, you gave it to, and it's here?
Yes.
On board docs.
Is it on the same thing?
It's under the agenda of the last meeting.
Oh, so we had to flash back. I had mentioned to Mr. Covington, based on the discussion that we had concerning ongoing maintenance of issues at the library. And suggested that perhaps there could be built-in additional employees, tech person, construction people, so that since the library is standing alone and there are funds that are sitting idle, would that not be a positive use of those funds so that you're not utilizing 500 staff for those jobs? Now, that's a generic question to you, but I believe, and Greg, is that within our authority to determine, to request, or to suggest positions.
May I just, okay.
Let them think about it. Go.
We never had a capital fund before. Until a couple of years ago when we started with the renovations of the libraries, because Ethel Schlegel, West Wyandotte, and South needed that. And then, of course, we thought Maine would cost the most. That's when the previous board okayed a capital fund. That capital fund is basically, we built that capital fund in order to do that, because obviously we didn't have anything. There was no capital fund whatsoever a couple of years ago. So what we have there now is the capital fund that the board okayed in order for us to utilize in either maintenance, renovations, or building.
Okay. But would not that be projects for roof, boiler,
yes,
certain items, not an ongoing salary position? An ongoing tech person that is just strictly your librarian tech person, or ongoing carpenter position that's strictly to, if the window needs a screw in it, you call up Sam, who is on 3rd floor or the basement, and they put the screw in.
If that's what the board suggests we do, we could do that. But before, Main Library cost us about $500,000, and we paid for the roof. So West Wyandotte was $250,000. We paid for that.
Right. I'm not speaking of that. I'm speaking of those salaried positions that would be solely your position. So as you're thinking about that, Greg.
I mean,
Mr. Goheen.
Well, the library certainly could employ personnel to fill those types of roles, just as they could employ personnel to fill, library staff, janitorial services, all those types of things. I don't know how that's, allocated in a sense, because they're all employees of the same umbrella at the end of the day. So I don't know if you account for those services across the relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you'd want to. I don't know if it'd be cost effective. You could do it this way. I don't know if it'd be cost effective to have 2 shops, for example, or 2 maintenance departments, or
I'm not talking about entire departments. I'm talking about just one person. I mean, surely maybe the plumber can't be the carpenter.
Right. But look at.
Let's have a discussion. We haven't had.
Here. Look at this. I think this is a better way to explain it. For example, we don't have a custodian who's hired for Schlegel High School. So we have custodians we hire. They're assigned to Schlegel High School, and the same thing would be for the library in that sense. I think that's how it's.
I would counter you that the library is a separate entity. So that library perhaps could have its own plumber, carpenter, lawn man, instead of using the
school
potentially commingling funds from the district. Just a discussion. You didn't finish.
So that's what I was going to say. And you just actually you said it.
Yeah.
Because I think that was better. So the issue has been, for instance, like technology. Our director of technology will sometimes have to train. And so the question is, who do we pay if they're training, if they're doing work for the library? I know that the board oversees the library, but is it two separate entities where, and I'm using the technology.
Technology doesn't.
But I'm just saying technology,
Library.
or I'll say Dennis, so his team spent 3 hours, or actually 3 days, helping with the budget. Whose role, where do we split the hairs, I guess? If they need support, do they only get their own support, or are we paying our folks to help them?
I think you're talking about a couple different things, and there's a couple different ways you could do it. I mean, one way is you could split and completely silo the two entities, but you'd lose some cost savings if you did that. So I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, that you can. That's not legal advice. You could do it that way. But what I understood, at least has happened in the past, is there's just an allocation of those costs. Best way I can describe it is, so if there was some portion of an expenditure that was spent on budgeting or whatever it is, then some portion of that would be paid for out of the library budget to cover that cost that's borne by the school district's budget. And whether that's been done or it's been done on a pro grata basis in the past, I don't know, but that's one way it's done. I can give you another example from another district. So for example, Turner Rec and the Turner School District are technically separate entities, but they share some allocation of services because it doesn't make sense for Turner Rec to have somebody doing some of the, they don't hire a separate CFO. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So they just, a portion of their budget pays for the time that they use the school district's financial person there. It'd be the same thing. That makes sense?
Because we do HR,
right.
All of those entities.
Right. So those types of expenditures for the portion or allotment of the time that are used could be charged back to the library's budget. I don't know if that's how it's been done, but that's how it could be done.
Well, since we're on top of this now, it probably is too late to change it because we're looking at August 12th, but I would think we would want to consider having that conversation. You know, the conversation up here is moving forward. Well, moving forward in, it's almost kind of like, and this is a bad example, you can take your training wheels off and you can ride your bicycle all by yourself, but not expecting you to fall. But are you stable enough to take your training wheels off? And it's rhetorical. It's rhetorical. But go back to you, Mr. Goheen. Is it the decision of this board to make a recommendation? Is it not decision? Is it in the authority of the board's realm of authority to make a recommendation like that?
Yeah, ultimately the board would have the authority to set and determine the budget and the relationship and how the monies to be allocated between the two entities. It would probably be the better practice to have the recommendation come from the administration back to the board, understanding what the board's direction is, as opposed to having the board make the recommendation and have it come back up that way.
Right, and I don't believe that was the intent because
no, I didn't
of the manner in which we've had this conversation.
No, I didn't think it so either, no.
I have to clarify things today.
I understand. I didn't take it that way at all. I just,
I
was just trying to phrase it the way I thought it
or
made
Ms.
sense.
Levers to take it.
Yep.
But just the thought of if you would, one would think you would hate to be in need one day and everybody's tied up over here.
No.
So what do you do?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, are we thinking in terms of everything, you know, like,
you know your needs.
Okay.
You know your needs.
Are you just talking about maintenance? Because, I mean, I'm thinking in terms of, I oversee all the public and the school libraries. But the public library, you know, that's why I'm not sure what this, is it a whole?
So what we're talking specifically, what our team, the in-house team handles are more so on the HR. We coach, supervise, I won't say, yeah, somewhat supervise to make sure that the regulations are all load. On the finance side, there's a coaching effort. There's a budgetary to make sure that their budget is where it needs to be so that it's speaking the same language, not necessarily they're getting inside of their budget because they don't have access to, I don't think you have access to go into that, but you may, I think you may. But when it comes to it, they are helping get a clear understanding. Carol and I have had that conversation when we actually did the budget process of how long it took and what we needed to do and those things. As far as the maintenance, we would have to look back at the maintenance work orders to see, okay, if the main library, who's using the main library? Are we bringing over our folks? We did one step where the officers are now coming out of their budget, and we're not paying for their officers because in the past we had paid for their officers out of our budget, and that was school. So now they are providing the salaries for those. They're employed through the school district, but they are providing the salaries for them.
The public library has, since we've switched over to LEOs, picked up the LEOs salaries. We did the training as well. I mean, they charged us. At the end of the year, they would journal, put a journal through, charging the public library. So we've picked that up.
So this transition, actually, this action is slowly taking place. For example, the LEOs are now coming directly out of your budget.
And since they've been out of our budget.
Okay. So the concept is not new to you. So takes 6 months or whatever before we get to this. One would think, I don't know where folks are, but you know what we're saying, that in conversation with administration, the best use of your dollars and the best use of district dollars. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to efficiency.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Is that correct?
Right, and at the end of the day, they do report.
Yes, yes. But there are two separate budgets.
Yes, oh, definitely.
And two separate funding. Right. And the weirdest thing is that it's the only one the state of Kansas left, which makes no sense.
Makes no sense at all.
But that's neither here nor there.
That concludes the budget review. The next steps.
Our departments.
There are other questions.
Right. We have 1 hour left. We cannot get through 29 pages. However, why don't you start off, but you don't know where it is in the, I asked Mr. Covington, because the departments, but let's start with schools. It's here. You've got $15 million for schools. And I guess my question is, when I question $35,000 for food, unless there are 4 votes to say we're not paying for that high V bill, it comes out of the supply line?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I say that...
There's a caveat to that.
A caveat to it?
Yes, if they've already purchased and eaten that food, we have to pay for it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's the bad part of the way we pay bills.
Or then we will need Mr. Goheen.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can win that one, but...
You have to pass the hat. And I guess body, and again, I deal with law, so, and Mr. Goheen does too. That's what we pay him big bucks for. The law says that each year the Board of Education of a school district shall conduct an assessment of the educational needs of each attendance center in the district. Well, we do not, that's what the law says. So we give you that job. Like we say, you're passing the baton back to us now, because how many schools do we have?
43 traditional and 5.
Okay, so when it says schools, we're talking about 50 schools.
All combined.
All right. So where we really have had pushback is that, and Mr. Goheen, if legally some of us would say, show us the math for school X, would the law allow that?
I'm not sure I know what you mean. If the.
The law says the board will conduct an assessment of educational needs of each attendance center in the district.
Right.
If some of us said, Mr. Covington, show us F.L. Schlegel's wish list, would the law allow that?
The law would allow you to look at that stuff, sure.
Okay. Now, we would never ask that because it probably is this deep. And electronically it's still that deep. But just for example, Board of Education. Now, last year, when we did budgeting, some of our concern was that if we're asking people to cut back on food expenditures, we should have some skin in the game. But then mid-year, we'd get into these discussions of bleeding hearts. We need to buy a table here, we need to buy a table there, and we overspent. Adopted was 5,000. Where's my 17, 18? I don't know what adopted back here, but we overspent. So 316, number 2, we're still allocating 316. We can't talk about him because he's sitting at the end of the table. But anyway, that's legal services, right?
Yes.
Okay. Explain supplies.
The supply increase is
from 5,800 to 48,250.
The KSB membership is new.
KSB is what?
New.
It's what?
New.
Oh, yeah, we do that every year.
So it was being paid from another budget. So we moved it over to your budget.
Okay,
the same thing as the board docs.
2,400?
It was being, yes, it was being paid for out of, I think, my budget or the line that was in the CFO.
That's 9,000.
So we moved it over to the board because it's truly a board expense.
11,000.
And the rest of it is just where we have looked at your trend.
Paper.
And the
we use paper?
$5 is not enough.
Mm-hmm. We put stuff in the library, Dr. Yeager. Uh-huh. Oh, so $30,000 worth of paper? Do we spend $30,000 worth of paper?
Between paper, food, and other supplies, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, the KSB also includes the unit pass or something?
The training.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we should be.
Okay, so that's included.
Yes.
You said you've suggested a membership to the National Association of School Boards. What does that cost? 6,000?
Right at.
6,000. Okay, between 6 and 8. This is what I'm saying. This is our budget, and we're proving that we don't have a clue what's in it. So that's the courtesy I'm asking you to extend to us. You know, we love to eat.
So what we were
That's a
doing
problem.
is we were taking care of your budget.
Uh-huh.
So all of that food, when y'all would have these special meetings on Saturdays and say, provide us with food,
Yeah.
that was actually coming out of my budget. And
Yours is next. So
and so we were taking that information out, and so we were providing it. So every time, even though you said no, you told us yes. So we would be, I guess, Susan would be insubordinate if she didn't do what you told her. So what we were doing is we just actually aligned your budget to your budget, in everything that you are doing. So that's.
Where is it over here?
It's not a new fund. There's not new money. It's always been there. You just
It's not a new
So
expenditure.
you
We just put it in the board.
realigned it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a $43,000 increase that we love to approve, but perhaps we do need to take the scaffold too. But we can have that conversation again.
So I will say that in your budget, that's nothing new. The only thing that's new would be which you need to be a member of, the national board, and of course the KSB, but all the other stuff is
past expenses.
Yeah, those are things. We just took it out, got the bills from Susan, which she had put in, and they pulled those bills out and said, this is how much you are spending. And so that's why you're seeing, so even if you take it out, then it's someone has to pick up the.
Well, we have to be
out of
careful not to spend it if we choose to take it out.
Right, so I think what would possibly need to happen is that you probably need to get a more accurate figure of how much you're spending on a monthly to show you can go in and see your budget. And that's what Allaview will provide you with, is that you can go in and see how much money are you spending, because some of it, the prices are greater for our district because of the students. I think that's one with the national, because of the students. So it's based on how many students you have. So yeah, those are some of the things that we have to consider.
Here's another cost. There's an advantage. We discussed the National Association. Are there any travel funds included in that 48? Because we're belonging to an organization, not going to any of the training.
It is to travel to the national meeting.
I can't understand you, I'm sorry.
It's to travel to the national board the National Association of School Boards meeting.
That's
We
included?
did put funds in there to pay for that travel.
Not for everybody, surely.
No.
No.
Okay. Did you answer? Did I hear a voice coming from over there? Because school districts have caught a lot of flack from everybody going to wherever.
So when you say travel, it's just whether it's air or if you took the train, doesn't include hotels, just travel.
It includes all of that.
All of it.
Oh, okay, because I just want to make sure, when people tell me travel, I just assume.
We don't want y'all to have to pitch a tent or anything.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just saying, I want to be clear.
Right.
Yeah.
It's nothing like a good understanding. Does it include hotel, food?
Hotel,
the whole
food,
bit?
and mode of transportation.
And how many people did we put a number on it?
I think it was
That's
3.
what we choose.
I can't remember the exact number. I think it was 3.
See, come on. I mean, we can't, this is for us. So we would like to say, oh, spend it all. But the clarity, we need to know. I mean, we'll authorize it, but at the end of the day, when she and I are fighting that, one didn't get to go, or the resources that they have to offer, there's a lot of resources.
But because you're the board, you can say, I want 7 people to go. And so we would then say, okay, out of which line would you like this to move the money over from? You have that authority. If you want to go 2 times to a meeting or 4 times, you can tell us that. So again, what we put in there is just an estimate, but you can always look back at your budget and say, you know what, there's this we need this this training and we want to bring, so how much is that? So we've got to someone has to tell Susan what line item to take it out of.
At the end of the day, we need to know, and there has been a lot of reluctance, let's say parochialism has been, I hate to look back, Ms. Drew, moving forward, we would learn a lot.
Well, I agree.
But we didn't
But it's just proposed. Remember, that's just a proposed budget. And so let's say you may not go to spend all of your supplies, and so it may be something that we would move that over to. So again, that's just an...
Right, proposed, but there was no clarity as for what 48. Put 50, It's got to all add up, right? Yeah, right.
Okay.
You want to explain your budget?
So the supply, so for instance, in my, I don't have that page, let me turn it.
Oh, can you see? I'm sorry.
So which ones?
Wait a minute. In the library, no, it's not paper. Oh, you've got paper. Are the paper the same that's in the?
Yes,
Okay.
it's what we passed out before.
Under superintendent.
So.
Can you see that?
I can.
Okay.
So which part? So the question, what's your question?
We've got one salary, one benefit, and it says essentially they're just now paying for your last 6 months of insurance.
So I think Mr. Covington can explain how that works.
Insurance, 6 months of insurance.
Because our insurance runs calendar year.
Okay.
So each year you'll get 6 months in each subsequent year.
So this was catch up.
Right, so this one, of course, that's when you had 2 superintendents.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So over here, this is the actual, so here we just have.
It's proposed for
Yes.
this year.
And so then the supplies, that's where my supplies would be the organizations that I would belong to, the executive coach that would come out of there, ASBE that I would attend, and then any other.
Why would KSB come out of?
Because there's another portion
For
that I have for
superintendents?
superintendents.
Okay.
Yes. And any other supplies, like those are all proposed.
Okay, what is it, what was debt service? Why was debt service out of there anyway? Mr. Covington? Just a way to get it, take it from any fund available?
It should not have been there for one thing, because the superintendent doesn't have debt service. It was improperly coded.
Yours? Chief Financial Officer. Okay. And again, the generic question is, and Dr. Yeager, you were in the same group that I was in, and we did not have an opportunity to go through some of these budgets.
And after our meeting, I followed up with Dennis to go through the questions that I had.
Oh, good.
And sent them to Dr. Faust, so I had an ample opportunity to ask my
Okay,
questions.
so.
And got them answered to my satisfaction.
Good. We're glad you did that. So at-risk funds, you're just finding a way to take some of these, spread the cost around, or help me understand that?
No, in
18.
2018 actuals, the at-risk was in the CFO. That's not a CFO cost.
Okay.
So we moved those to HR in 2019. And then we moved the counselors to student services. We're aligning our expenses where they should be coded instead of hodgepodge into either the finance office or the chief finance officer's budget. We put them in the right department that they should be covered so they can track them.
Good job. Same thing with Fairfax contract number 3. Says, what does that mean?
In the 18-19 budget, that Fairfax contract, the district ride insurance, homeless transportation, all of that is still in the chief finance officer's budget.
Okay.
And we're in the process of still doing more scrubbing to move those to the right department, but we couldn't get that pulled out in time when we was working on the budget because of all the different coding. But we will eventually move those, like that homeless transportation. We will move that to transportation.
This year?
In the 1920 budget.
1920 budget?
Yes.
Okay,
Once
so.
we figure out the charges, they will move over and be coded correctly. But we will move them at the end of the year into the transportation budget so we can see those.
End of 19?
20.
End of 20?
20 budget.
Okay,
sorry,
okay, that's
budget.
right. Okay, so when we approve these numbers, we will.
They're currently in my budget.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Finance? Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, the
Finance
biggest
is, what's, footnote 2?
Yeah, we cover the utilities, the health insurance consultant, and the wellness incentives for the whole district. It's in the finance budget.
This is Ms.
Yes.
Okay. Purchasing is Mr. Carell?
Ma'am?
Purchasing is Mr. Carell?
Yes.
Question, so so you have moved the bulk of the purchases to departments? I mean,
Yes.
Instead of, they're pretty small here.
Yes. There's very little that purchasing has to purchase for purchasing.
Okay, we understood that. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, we're not voting on any of this, so you're welcome to leave if this is boring you. But to...
We can vote for...
Excuse me, they can't leave. I need an approval
Oh, well.
on the notice of hearing.
I mean, if you wanted to, you could. So.
Some of us asked in advance of this meeting for clarification.
And some of us didn't.
Right, and I sent out an email requesting that if there were more, what questions, things like that, and I didn't get a response. But if you have questions, we're here to listen.
Okay.
No one's complaining.
Oh, sorry, I misinterpreted that.
Okay.
We've gone over nutritional services.
Yes.
Help me understand operations and maintenance. Once again,
the increase on the first line is that where we moved the $500,000 out of capital into this budget.
Okay.
And the rest of them are pretty much straightforward as to like the benefit increases and small changes in our supplies and purchase services.
Transportation. Are buses in here? Are buses in capital outlay?
Capital, yes.
Okay.
The main thing here is where you see the negative number. That's for when we get the dollars back from the schools that we transport. So that's the bill back for school transportation.
Technology.
The increase in the 18-19, we corrected it to put into the right categories. If you see purchase services, supplies, and equipment, we were coding things where money was instead of coding things where they should be coded. So we aligned those to where they should have been.
Okay.
So between the three lines, there's not a lot of change as far as in total, but where they was actually recorded as changed.
So there may be 2.4 million additional purchased services, but they're not in this department.
Like the 4.4 million, if you look at 18-19, 4.4 million.
Right.
Part of that should be down in supplies because it's not a purchase service. So we realigned the 4.4, the 2.5, and the 2.1 into the categories they should be. Like we increased that equipment line from 2.1 to 4.6 because we were budgeting equipment in the wrong line. So they will put it in purchase services, and then we would have to transfer it to equipment. So we just went ahead and made those adjustments in the budget.
So with a little luck, we shouldn't be audited.
Correct.
As much.
We should be in good shape.
Ms. Hoofman's budget. Chief of Schools.
Just let you know what's in it. We moved the Diploma Plus to the Chief of Schools, and we have the 5 improvement coaches. Now we had 3, now we have 5. So that's the increase in the salary lines. The rest of it is just benefits and some purchase services that goes along with Diploma Plus.
So Diploma Plus staff is not in schools department. They're in this budget.
Yes.
Okay. Got a question about that? You think? Department of Schools.
Yeah.
I mean, Chief of Schools.
Only what we've said before, just concerned to make sure we utilize, I know with the one thing we purchased, that should help, because we just want to see more kids come out with an associate's degree. It shouldn't be 1 and then 2. And I think you've heard that's the biggest concern, to utilize that to its fullest.
Curriculum. We should be able to get through this by the end of the 35 more minutes.
The biggest change in the curriculum budget is that we were no longer purchasing Fontes and Purnell for 4th and 5th grade. So you see the drop in 18-19 in that supply line. And then we also moved the Diploma Plus to their own budget for the supplies.
Are there any other textbook changes we're anticipating?
I mean, there's always changes as we adopt and that, but as of right now, there isn't. What we might do is, depending on some courses that are offered, we may have to find additional resources for them as they're proposed for the coming year.
For example, Spanish?
We've already got the resources for Spanish taken care of.
Research and testing? Would not the tools for the testing be over here, Dr. Faust?
Not for the
That
screener.
1, 2, oh, the screener, the screener wouldn't be here? This is Rand?
Yes, that's Rand.
Okay.
Right, this is Rand's budget.
Does he have staff?
Himself and plus 2.
Himself. Just one staff?
I think it's one. There's another individual. Is it
He's got
122. Gotta be
himself,
more than
one
one.
staff, and one vacancy when we've done these numbers.
So he's got 2. 122. See, all his software costs
Yes.
$400,000.
Yeah, it seems to be all of the
Reports and stuff. Okay. This is a special ed special budget, right? Special ed special budget.
For special ed, including the federal dollars and our general dollars.
Okay. You stay on that side. Keep sneezing on that side.
The only change is really the adopted budget was when you all adopted it and the numbers came in was too high. So we have a more realistic 1920 budget based on the hours that was in the master schedule for the CTE courses. That's approved by KCKPS.
Now, these dollars are paid to ATS, or how are these dollars spent? Paid out? Mr. Goheen, maybe help. He needs a lifeline. Voc Ed.
Which ones?
Voc Ed.
Vocational
the federal
education.
and CTE dollars. That the
I don't have these.
State Bill 155.
Yeah, that we don't fund much.
Right, so it's just a little weird, but that comes from the community college.
Right.
Where they aren't supposed to charge us, so that will be more of our students who are going over to any of our community colleges to receive services.
Transportation.
And transportation is.
Transportation. Because who pays for the test? We used to reimburse, we don't do that anymore.
Which test?
Their certification, their license. We don't pay for that, right? We used to reimburse. Okay, that just comes out of their pocket.
That wouldn't include, we're not talking about like the IB testing.
No, talking
you're
about
The
welder's license.
Okay, okay.
Like that. Yeah. Microphone, please.
I believe that we used Diploma Plus funds to pay for the first time, and if they failed, or any time after that, they had to pay for it themselves.
Okay, so
I got it.
there's still some kind of support for the
And see,
student.
the problem was, like I said, we were pulling money from all to get for the Diploma Plus, so we didn't know what Diploma Plus was actually paying for.
Okay. Now, the arts, music, P, fine arts is so low because?
You say so low?
Uh-huh.
It
Well, I can give you the answer.
it covers what we have budgeted, as far as positions in the contract services that they have.
Right.
I mean,
You paid for the equipment out of capital budget.
Right.
That's why it's so low. Had it been paid differently?
Not that I know of. We purchased it out of.
There have been a couple times in the past where we've picked up
Like
a couple
in the
of additional things, but it's not been a regular practice.
Right.
Okay. Now, Diploma Plus?
This is the new department that we pulled from all over the places to really to put into a Diploma Plus budget so we can actually see the expenditures. Like Superintendent said, we were just paying for stuff out of different people's budgets, and you really couldn't see what the cost of Diploma Plus was.
So this is for clarification because these dollars are actually in your chief of schools budget? Or is this a standalone budget?
This is a standalone budget.
It's a standalone budget.
Most of these dollars are in the curriculum and chief of schools, so we've moved them to here. So the new director of Diploma Plus can see what they're responsible for, and as you can see, it's just salaries and benefits.
Okay, so why is it not under with the rest of them, chief of schools?
Because they didn't have a budget. We itemized their budget, so giving them a specific budget. They do report to, it's a department within a department, so that's what you're seeing.
Right.
So within her, that deputy
Chief of school.
That's one of the departments. That's all. Just like special ed is also in her department.
Okay. HR. So where recruitment costs?
They would mainly be in the purchase services line and supply line for recruitment.
Workforce development?
This budget's pretty much their salaries and some supplies for when we do the training.
Right. And again, remember we received, I'm sure you shared with Dr. Faust the comment about some of the professional development. Does professional development come out of this budget? That some of the, you shared that, the comment, that it was less than quality. No, you didn't share that with them.
No, I did not.
When we were going through the negotiating contracts, we got a chance to listen to some young teachers and a few older ones, and the younger ones felt that a lot of the training they had when they were in college, they were hearing the same thing in our professional development, and their expectation was they thought they were going to get more, and it wasn't new to them, but it may have been new to some of the older teachers. And that's still, I'm the mess.
No. Mike, I just have a question. Did they implement it? Because the results don't show that they implemented what they learned in college.
I'm just telling you what they said. I hear what you said.
So that's
we are allowed to talk.
No. Yeah. So that's all we're saying is
okay. Now I'm just.
Which is a good thing that they've heard it. So that means that we are up to date with what they're saying. The colleges.
No, that's not the message they're delivering.
It's been so. I would say those individuals, go back and say, tell me what the kids who are in your classroom, what their reading levels are.
I'm just telling you what they said. They said
you implement it.
This is what they heard, and you still get some complaints from even some of the other teachers, and I hear what you're saying. But we do need to make it where it's relevant and to get them to buy into it.
And the state feels it's important, but the state does not pay for it. So professional development is, it goes along with the mentoring. And the Wednesday afternoon off. So, Title II?
This Title II, professional. There's some federal funds.
Yeah, there's some.
Okay.
PD and recruitment in Title II.
So actually, this recruiting is next, and it's a recruiting.
I said in the HR budget, that 127 include recruiting. We pulled all that out. They have their own page for HR. It as a recruiting division of HR.
So was this in or not in?
Not in.
Okay, so we misspoke.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, here again, the education reimbursement, the parity teaching, the 300,000 is the estimated amount that the SPED chief said
That's
were.
all they needed.
That's all they needed.
History, that's all they needed.
Okay, and these are the only type of pairs we have? But that estimate was for everybody. Yes, no?
But the only part we reduced was the parity teachers. The other reimbursements are still there. We only reduced the parity teacher line.
Right.
Remember I said it was like 140
Yeah, left over.
For parity teacher. The rest of that was for education reimbursements.
So that at any time a parent says, I want to go to college, because we've had people come to the podium here and ask for, but they weren't paras. I think they were teachers who asked for tuition reimbursement, and we didn't have a plan because we don't have a program, correct?
For teachers to get their master's degree?
It wasn't master's.
You were saying teacher to spend, or?
No. They were regular teachers. They were asking for a reimbursement, tuition reimbursement.
You've got something in the contract for
There's something in
that.
the teacher negotiated contract where we do provide that for them.
Great,
But it's
you
a
were
certain
I
there.
don't know the specifics of what we're talking about, though. I mean, there are some programs and there's some contractual language in the negotiated agreement. I'm just not sure
Well, you know,
specifically what we're
you can
talking
always go
about.
back and look in the minutes, because they are recorded, and the topic that they speak on is recorded, correct? So we can always go back and
Sure.
look, like Dr. Yeager said, pull the tape, because they were speaking of tuition reimbursement, but it wasn't in a master's program. They didn't specify that. It was more like, why don't you all broaden tuition reimbursement for other teachers? And we didn't have, in that public comment section, we don't comment.
I don't know.
We need to find that. Okay. Assistant Superintendent?
Link is, but no,
He's
that's
assistant
Alan.
superintendent.
Really, the only change.
This is Alan. Okay.
is we directed the transportation cost to where it better reflects what we're expected to pay.
Okay. Student Services? This is Lisa Stewart?
Yes.
Okay.
Biggest change is we moved counselors from the CFO's budget over to here. See the big jump in certified and the benefits to go along with it, because we moved all the counselors out of the CFO's budget to her budget.
Where is our trauma money, if we have any trauma costs? For lack of trauma services, are those all grant?
It would be in this
It would be
budget.
here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At-risk preschool?
Very little
Increase in
change in that
transportation
budget.
costs.
Very little. We just increased the transportation costs.
Are we adding numbers? Are we adding capacity? Are we adding capacity?
For our
At-risk preschool?
Not to my understanding, no. We, no.
Okay. Parents, teachers,
That's pretty much flat.
flat,
Yeah,
yes.
$1,205,000 to
$3,000.
$1,208,000.
ESOL is what?
English is the
Second language.
Okay. How different is that from ELL?
It's the same.
Same, just title difference.
ELL is an English language learner. ESOL stands for
English second
English speakers of other languages,
Okay.
I believe.
So all of our language people would come under this department? Our new language people?
Not our world.
Not like world language folks, but people of the ESL department.
Bilingual outreach coordinator? Got it. But those, are those dollars in this budget, or those dollars standalone? Those dollars in this budget, are those dollars standalone? Okay. We'll get the right numbers, correct? We'll get the clean numbers. I mean, when we give you approval today, we will get the correct numbers.
Yes.
Okay. Police.
This is what we repurposed the 5 police officers for.
Repurpose 5.
Yeah.
Purchase X-ray machines.
Yes.
How about a new fingerprinter? Is that what you said?
That's being bought this year.
Is it in here? Equipment?
Came out of last year's money.
Right, it's been bought, well, I'm sorry, it was bought last year.
There
We
we go.
already into 1920.
Like yesterday.
We bought in 1819.
Will the interns go in your budget too? The intern program that you guys?
If we adopt that, it would go in, it would have to be similar to what they did the intern program, and I don't know how they ran that budget with Joe Fives. I don't know where that's being controlled of right now. That was looking forward, not part of this stuff.
Okay.
If we adopt an intern program.
Where is it proposed?
I think the whole internship program is right now being proposed. You had a beta program out of Joe Fives' group.
Right.
I didn't control that.
There's not an increase in the
5 minutes too,
1920
right?
budget for the interns.
I'm sorry, I was talking.
There's not an increase in the 1920 budget for that, for the increase of our interns.
And what we just went over is what the public libraries is.
Yes. No, this is school libraries.
No, this says public library.
Okay, I'm sorry, yes, that's what we went over.
And the school library is where we've already cut some of the supplies, e-books, things like that from redirected funds. That redirection is reflected in these numbers.
Yes.
Did we have chief of staff before? Chief of staff? Yes, we didn't.
Chief of schools.
Oh, chief of schools, now chief of staff.
This is where we added the executive director and the coordinator of our federal programs, plus that foundations director. They report to chief of staff.
Where is the foundation director's salary and benefits? The education
It's in
foundation?
at 488.
Now, I asked that person why we were picking up the foundation salary.
They redirect, so they pay us back.
Oh, so.
A portion of it.
What's the portion, 50/50?
Except for the benefits.
Except we pick up the benefits and the salary split 50-50.
So we'll see a reimbursement in this.
Yeah, in the actuals, you'll see what
Got it. Because we hadn't had a director in 3 or 4 years.
Right, and we were.
Lacking. Gotcha, I got you. Is that the end of it?
Yes, ma'am. Now, before you, in your handout, you should have the notice of hearing. I need to walk you through a couple of changes on that. Everybody have that in front of them?
Yes.
As you see in the general, the meal is still 20. We did not change that. But if you look at the supplemental general, we reduced the tax rate from 13,596 to 9,054. But we increased by the same amount the bond and interest mill levy because we're not generating enough cash so we can pay off our debt quicker. And doing this allows us to do that. We cover all our expenses under the general LOB, but we need to increase our cash.
Okay, so you're going to have to start over on that one. The supplemental general LOB is line 2, code 08.
Yes. If you go all the way over to the right, you see 9054.
That the 1819 tax rate was 13.596.
Yes.
1920, you're reducing it to 9054. And then you went to page 2.
Yes. Line 62.
Line 62.
You see the bond and interest.
Uh-huh.
In 1819, it was 7.893. and in 1920 it's 12.435. So the mill levies in total stayed the same. We just redirected where the dollars would go to between the LOB and our debt service payment for bond and interest.
How else does that translate? Break it down another level. What does that mean? Do we get any further?
Do
we get any less aid or more aid from the state?
No, we got more aid from the state.
We get more aid from the state by changing the to 12.43? Lifeline.
Yes.
Hello, Tracy Kaiser. So it was really kind of a perfect storm with the supplemental general this year. We collected a higher amount in taxes last year. Our state aid is also increasing. That factor went up. And we're only allowed to spend what is our legal max. So we're able to carry over that money, and so we don't have to levy as much this year to come up with that total amount.
For LOB or for bond and interest?
For LOB.
Okay.
And so by doing this, it would allow us to pay off our debt sooner. We also felt like we undercollected a little bit in bond and interest last year. So advice from Piper Jaffray is that we do need to increase that mill levy to make sure that we do have enough to pay for our bond and interest payments this year. So this would equalize that out.
How does it translate to the taxpayer?
Exactly the same. Flat
So
mill
they
levy.
don't see any increase on their tax bill?
Correct. Flat mill levy.
No. The mill levy is the same. How does it translate in their tax bill? Do you see
They
any?
will not see any change, correct.
Okay.
Right. It is both, it's calculated both the same way. It's just more of a strategic way for us to utilize those tax dollars, kind of opposite of what was done last year. A little bit too high in LOB was collected, not enough in bond and interest, and we're going to flip that this year to make that up.
Now, anticipating we don't know what will happen next year, what do you think we will do next year?
Probably something closer to in between. You know, that we'll probably want to maybe, 9 as a mill levy for bond and interest and increase LOB to compensate for that.
But with the same end goal of not showing any tax increase to the taxpayer.
Absolutely.
But we have to report this out.
Right.
Okay. Other changes?
Do you see the capital one stay flat at 8, down at line 16?
Uh-huh.
And the library one is down on line 82. And they're flat also. So there's no really tax
9.756.
increase for the mill levies in any of our budgets.
Yeah, mill levy, people don't understand mill levy. People understand what is it costs on their tax bill.
No tax increase.
We will be asked. And that's one thing you don't lie about.
Right.
Because every household gets that tax
budget.
statement. Okay. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen, about this notice of hearing? And where does this go? What newspaper, just the Record?
Yes, and we have to have it to them by Monday. We have a trip up to see Dennis on Wednesday morning, Dennis and Chuck, to make sure it looks okay. And
I said Tuesday.
It moved to Wednesday. We're going up on Wednesday. We wasn't sure about what was going to happen today, so we moved it a little bit. So we're going to go up on Wednesday.
So you're going
morning.
to cancel our Wednesday meeting if
I knew you was
going
going to get through today.
Uh-huh, yeah. Your nose is growing.
Yes, I knew you was going to get through today.
Uh-huh, your nose is growing, Pinocchio.
And so now we will publish this. Well, we have to have it to them on Monday so they can get it prepared to go in the paper on Thursday. And then it will run for 10 days, and then we'll have our public hearing on the August 13th meeting. And follow the public hearing, you all will vote to approve the budget.
Other one's
I
not
would need a
loading.
motion.
274 pages are not loading, so.
And in your library docs, there is the actual big, thick budget book.
That's why I said it's not loading, so 274 pages not loading, so we'll look at it later. Need a motion?
I move we approve the budget for 2019-2020.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Covington and Dr. Faust and all your staff. Upcoming dates. Tomorrow is Construction Workforce Industry Day. I mean, Wednesday. 25th Wednesday? 5th Wednesday? Thursday? Thursday.
Today's the 22nd, 3 days from now.
So what's that about? What is that? That's something of importance?
They just sent to us and asked us to invite.
Okay, so July 29th, Monday, is a new teacher orientation at Sumner, not Wyandotte, as the earlier notice said. Mentioned the 31st EIC meeting, right next door, correct? 333-133-333. Convocation August 6th at Downtown Memorial Hall.
What time do we need to be there at the back to school event, and is there special parking for us again, or?
We will make sure that we have parking for the board members as usual, and I'll get an email to Susan to declare where that is. Parking is an issue, but I think they're going to take care of everything, but we'll get you guys where you need to be. I do not have the time. I'll refer that to someone else.
Easily, because the crowd will be all the way out to Parallel when we get there. Were you there last year, Dr. Faust? Oh, I think there were 5,000 participants last year, weren't there? Something like that.
Talking about the
There were about 5,000. Yeah, yeah.
I've reached out to the chief over there. I need to get a program because they have redirected kind of how they're channeling people through that. So I'm still waiting to hear from that. As soon as I get that back, I'll.
Okay. Is it still Upper Jewel? Is it still Upper Jewel? Is it still Upper Jewel?
I don't
know.
I do not know. I think they're trying to make some changes just to make sure they have the people routed through the right direction.
Wow.
I'll find out.
Yeah, it's a serious need, serious need. And you don't have to verify that you are a citizen of the county. So, it's what it is. And we are happy that we can serve. Questions, comments? We see each other again Monday? Is that the soonest we see each other?
If I may interrupt, just want to say congratulations to the KCKPS communications team for the award that they received, the recognition of the National School Public Association. So
that's right.
That's a positive thing.
Tell her to get back in here.
I just want to say, I failed to say this, but I want to thank Tracy for all her hard work. We got those documents 2 days later than they said they would. And then we also moved our meeting up a couple of days earlier than we had planned for. And she worked diligently over the past 3 days to get that whole document done. I just want to publicly thank her for her hard work.
Thank you.
And again, I thank the staff. I thank the board members for tolerating the lawyer and myself, because I know that there was gnashing of teeth and crying and all that. So thank you. Need a motion, please? To adjourn. Yes. Anyone going to second the motion?
Second.
Yes, you didn't want to second your motion. Been moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor, thank you.
Aye.
Y'all don't want to go home.